EmMajority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
EmMajority Report with Sam Seder.
If I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Thursday, December 7th, 2023. My name is Emma Vigeland in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Cory Doctorow will be with us to talk about his most recent book, The Internet Con: How to Seize the Means of Computation. And later in the show, Raga Makawi will be with us to talk about the mass atrocities occurring right now in Sudan. Meanwhile, it's been 2 months since October 7th and Israel's near daily carpet bombing of Gaza. The death toll is now 17,000 and over 2 million displaced. After forcing Gazans to go south to the city of Khan Yunis, now Israel is telling them to go further south to Rafah, which Israel is also bombing. A Reuters investigation finds that an Israeli tank killed its journalist, Issam Abdallah, who was clearly identified as a member of the press in October. A reminder that Reuters was criticized for using passive language in that case, and now they determined that it was Israel. The White House its proposed arms package includes a provision that would waive congressional notifications for future weapons packages to Israel. Seems bad. Republicans in the Senate voted to block that package, though, which needs 60 votes. Because of Ukraine aid and a lack of border wall funding, Bernie Sanders was the only Democrat to vote no. House Republicans are busy at work, though. They're crafting an effort to censure Jamal Bowman for accidentally pulling the fire alarm in an adjacent building. Meanwhile, the ethics probe into Matt Gaetz' conduct with minors has at least one witness, and Republicans are continuing the Democrats' probe, which started in 2021. So somewhere Kevin McCarthy is smiling. Democrats, Merkley in the Senate and Adam Smith in the House, introduced a bill that would bar hedge funds from owning single-family homes, requiring them to sell before the full ban takes effect in 10 years, which I think is a great piece of legislation. The Biden administration has determined that it has the authority to seize the patents of certain high-priced medicines. So next step is doing it. 3 people were killed by a gunman on the University of Nevada, Las Vegas campus. The gunman was killed by police, a former professor in his 60s. And lastly, Eric Adams' approval rating falls to 28%, the worst in the history of Quinnipiac's polling of New York City mayors. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Feels like we live at this office these days because we were here late night covering the final GOP debate. Perhaps the most inconsequential of them all, but maybe the most fun because we got some props. I mean, Vivek, rhymes with cake, brought a Sharpie and a notepad and then wrote Nikki equals corrupt. So saying it louder for the people in the back.
Yeah, I think people who didn't watch last night, the one thing that was interesting was how hard Vivek went at Nikki Haley.
Oh, he hates her, and she hates him.
Exactly.
I mean, they don't even acknowledge each other after the debate's over. And Christie was white knighting for her. You can see where the orientation of the money on the Republican Party is at.
And I didn't appreciate at the time, but that little challenge of she can't name the counties in Ukraine, provinces in Ukraine that she wants to save.
He kept saying that.
She did look a little bit nervous about that challenge, I must say. I wonder if she could name one.
But I just do find it funny that, Vivek crammed for the debate and memorized a bunch of Ukrainian provinces and was like, this is how I'm going to get Nikki.
Right.
This is how I'm going to get her.
It was the classic, like, oh, you listen to Slayer? Name 5 songs.
Yeah, right.
But also, and then the thing where he's like trying to square his Israel thing of like, yeah, I think we should be isolationists and not help anybody. And it's like, well, do you want us to fund Israel? It's like, I think me and Bibi should both fight our terrorists together and high five each other at the same time.
Right. And that's how much I respect Israel. It was a bizarre display, especially because, Donald Trump was not there, and he has an insurmountable lead at this point. We will get to Trump, I think, later in the program, refusing to say he wouldn't be a dictator on Sean Hannity's program. But first, let's talk here about, obviously, the continued atrocities in Gaza. It's been now 2 months since October 7th. I said this earlier, but the death toll is now around 17,000 in Gaza. And, we have these kind of statements made by Blinken and the White House about how Israel is working towards efforts to minimize civilian casualties, and there is zero
Blinken,
evidence
the guy
to that
who was
effect.
going around the Middle East asking, hey, will you take these Gazans?
Right, but essentially, like, just conceding the point that the ethnic cleansing is gonna happen.
Running errands for an ethnic cleansing using American, taxpayer money. Thanks, Blinken.
And the idea that is just a foregone conclusion should be deeply troubling to anybody that has a conscience. But apparently, the White House seemingly is ideologically committed to supporting Israel no matter what, and that's Blinken and Biden together. There has been a shift in tone, but I feel that's...
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, right. If it's indicative of how things are changing behind the scenes, that's good, but it's still not enough.
No.
And, hopefully Netanyahu is facing some semblance of pressure from the Americans. Again, not enough, but hopefully some semblance of it. The international community, every country that, isn't basically the US, Germany, the UK, is raising alarm bells and is outraged. I mean, you can see that reflective in the votes from a few weeks ago in the United Nations, how isolated America is on this. And that, I would hope, is at least going to have some effect. But what Netanyahu also has to deal with, and he doesn't care about the Palestinians, that's clear. He's enthusiastically mass murdering them at this point. So the lawn mowing is that's already a given at this point. All he cares about is the domestic pressure that he's going to be facing, because from the perspective of the hostages' families, the carpet bombing of the place where the hostages have been taken doesn't maybe seem like the best idea if your primary concern is, and for the families, that's their primary concern, is the safety of their family members. Now, Netanyahu doesn't care. That's becoming abundantly clear at this point. The primary objective is annihilating as many people in Gaza as humanly possible. Retribution and ethnic cleansing is first, and the safety of the Israeli hostages is secondary. And this audio leaked here. It was published in part on the Israeli news site Ynet, and there are subtitles here which I will read for the podcast audience. This was leaked audio of a meeting between the freed Israeli hostages and Netanyahu, and you'll hear a woman here. She was abducted and freed along with her children, but her husband remains in captivity. And this is her in the meeting with Netanyahu, basically ripping into him. You're putting politics over returning the hostages. And you think the men are strong? My husband was hitting himself every day, punching his own face until he would bleed, because it was unbearable for him. And now he's alone. And God knows in what conditions. And all you're thinking about is collapsing Hamas. fucking give them back whoever they want and bring everybody back. The women, the men. I was diapering elderly women. I watched R.A. Zalmanovich die next to me, and this is what you have to say? That's what you want to collapse Hamas's rule? That you want to collapse Hamas's rule? That you want to show them who has bigger balls? No one's life is more important than another. None of, alright, pause it for a sec, sorry. No one of us there is worthy, this is just like some odd grammar, of less attention than any resident in Israel. Okay, keep going. It's illogical that Hamas comes before us. You will bring everybody back, and not next month. They won't wait another 50 days. They won't wait until because you claim they're strong enough. Or that you have enough intel. You have no intel.
Yeah.
Look how we were bombed. It's a fact that no one knew anything about our whereabouts. Respect, people are saying to her. So, I mean, that's on point, and that's clear there.
This needs to be echoed by leaders outside of Israel. Because within Israel, there's still a huge, this is poll results hawkish, 57% of Israeli Jews, they believe that IDF was using too little firepower, 36 says was using just amount, so just 1.8 say it was using too much. So let's not overstate the degree to which Bibi is not supported with regards to his bombing of Gaza. The only way that this sort of ember, and Ilan Pappy said this when he was here, the only way those embers of righteousness really become flames is if they're blown on from outside of the society. And that's why what Biden and Blinken and even Bernie Sanders, which I appreciate the votes, but you got to stop undermining the international effort toward a ceasefire. Yep. You just can't, no one's going to hear a single thing you're saying until you stop undermining what the international left is saying. We need to help these people because like this is an urgent, like you could see death squads toward people who are speaking out against this war with the degree to which there's I think a pro war hysteria, but continue.
Yeah, I mean, and that is, I think, we saw the protests within Israel in support of the hostages and their families who are echoing many of these sentiments, obviously, seeing increasingly that this is Netanyahu feeling like this is an existential threat to his continued rule over Israel, where he needs to continue to play up the threat so that the war can continue, so that he can have his wartime government, so that he can delay the investigations into him, which, it came out a few days ago that his lawyer had successfully gotten the number of hearings down about his corruption charges from 3 times a week to 2 because he is so wrapped up in this war in Gaza. Like, this is in the same way that getting elected for Trump here in the United States is existential for his survival, and he feels that the only way he's going to stay out of prison is to become president. Netanyahu feels something quite similar in Israel as it relates to the continued crimes of genocide in Gaza. And I say that because I wanted to read this account in The Independent from a doctor. And content warning, you will hear things that are disturbing, but this is the kind of stuff that needs to be repeated so people really understand what's happening. A badly burned toddler screaming for the mother he doesn't know is dead, and screaming because doctors do not have enough painkillers to relieve his suffering. An 8-year-old boy whose brain is exposed as bombing damaged parts of his skull. A teenage girl, her eyes surgically removed because every bone in her face is smashed. A 3-year-old double amputee whose severed limbs are laid out in the pink box beside him. And in the background is the stench of rotting flesh as maggots creep out of untreated wounds. This is the daily reality at the European hospital inside the southern Gaza city of Khan Yunis, as described by veteran British war surgeon Tom Potakar, who works for the International Committee of the Red Cross. In recent days, Israeli forces have started to storm Khan Yunis, the largest city in southern Gaza, launching what is believed to be the biggest ground assault since a fragile 7-day truce collapsed last week. Inside the European hospital, one of the main medical centers servicing the city and surrounding areas, medics struggle to treat the relentless stream of wounded, Dr. Potikar says, and nearly half of them are children. I've lost count of the number of children we have treated who have horrific injuries, burns, amputations, who've lost their whole family, Dr. Potikar tells The Independent from inside the hospital compound, which, like other medics, he has not left for 5 weeks. Palestinian and international medics are sleeping on the floor of the nursing quarters, living off packets of noodles and working 14-hour shifts, he explains. One night, Dr. Potikar says he was nearly killed by shrapnel, which came through a window. Some medics, including nursing staff and surgeons like Dr. Potikar worked with, have been killed. That Dr. Potikar worked with have been killed alongside dozens of members of their family. At least one of the 100 ICRC staff working in Gaza has also been killed. Recently, Dr. Potikar was treating burn patients in an intensive care unit who had fled north of the country and whose wounds were septic, as the dressing had not been changed for days. On the bed next to Burns' patient was a 3-year-old boy. He had 2 above-knee amputations done the night before the airstrike. I found out afterwards that his father had also had an amputation, and the rest of the family didn't make it, Dr. Potikar says. This is not a one-off event. The point here is that, again, I said this the other day, the violence is not just reflective in the death totals. The terrorist attack in Israel that killed around 1,200 Israelis, you know, the continued violence from that is the taking of the hostages and the trauma that results from that. But the continued violence in Gaza extends far beyond the death totals to tens of thousands maimed in that same way, and many who will die in hospitals because of the lack of care, and the violence of displacement and the violence of becoming homeless. So we're talking about an unprecedented scale of destruction and violence at this point. And the brutality of that and the international recognition of that, hopefully, I've got to pray, will eventually, get to Netanyahu. But it's seemingly the domestic stuff, and that is going to be the thing. Like, that's the poker in his ass.
The first firewall to crack is liberal Zionists domestically who need to wake up and put on big boy pants and realize that actually there is a contradiction between going after Hamas and saving the hostages. Blinken tweeted out on October 8th, we support Turkey's efforts for a ceasefire and so we can start getting rid of hostages. Israel has plenty of Palestinians caged. They had plenty before October 7th. They have even more sense that they can start using to trade for hostages. They don't want to because they said, well, actually, we're more concerned about terrorism. We're more concerned about, and the truth is, you can give all the Palestinians, free all of them from the prisons, and the only thing that you need to do to stop on October 7th from happening again is guard the concentration camp and stop guarding the settlers in occupied territories. And so like that, you don't care about hostages thing. That's projection. That's Bibi Netanyahu. And we have this guy here who's a former U.S. intelligence analyst. And I know we got to go, but former U.S. intelligence analyst. Crap. I have it. Oh, you have it? Okay. Yeah, it's a long clip, but I think we have the point here. And the Zionist right is plenty honest about the contradiction. Between
It's not that long?
No, it's just the time code.
Okay, it's just the time code. I mean, let's play it then. Let's play it.
That's the point. When we declared war, they declared war a long time ago. We just caught up with them. When we declared war, the first thing that the government should have done was declare a state of national emergency and told all of the hostage families, you will keep your mouths shut or we will shut them for you. You will not interfere in our management of this war. You will not be used by the international community or by our own leftists who managed the Shalit deal.
Yeah, pause it now.
As a weapon against us.
You, person who has somebody being held hostage, won't be used. Like, no, they're not. They're trying to work toward their own ends.
Yep. Yeah, no, you will not get in the way of us using your trauma and pain for our own expansionist aims. Sounds a little similar to what the Israeli government has been doing for 75 years with Jewish trauma and pain more broadly.
And that's Jonathan Pollard, who is a U.S. citizen and a former Israeli spy.
Yep. Jailed for spying for Israel.
All right, folks. Quick break, and when we come back, we'll be speaking with Cory Doctorow. We are back, and we are joined now by Cory Doctorow, science fiction author, activist, journalist, author of many, many books, and his most recent book is called The Internet Con: How to Seize the Means of Computation. Cory, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. That's actually my latest nonfiction book. I wrote 9 books during lockdown, and a novel just came out called The Lost Cause, which is a solar punk utopian novel that Rebecca Solnit and Kim Stanley Robinson, Naomi Klein all love. But I'm happy to talk about The Internet Con because that is my most recent nonfiction.
Nonfiction. I should have known, honestly, but it's hard to keep up. You're so damn busy. But everything you write, you've been on the show before. You're an excellent writer and author, and couldn't encourage people more to pick up your fiction work, but also your nonfiction work here, The Internet Con, which is a really great read, and something I think that could be a great stocking stuffer around the holidays because it's accessible, and I think that's a great plus for the book, honestly. And your book pulls no punches. It's really a how-to for destroying big tech and not tweaking it, dismantling it for good. You make that abundantly clear, and why was that so important for you to do?
Well, look, I think we've had a couple of decades of real policy failure around big tech, where we observe these tech barons like Mark Zuckerberg rising to these positions of unelected authority, effectively being the social media czar for 4 billion people for life. And we observe that he is very bad at this job, objectively speaking. And we say, okay, we need to make him better at that job or find someone else to do that job. And so you see things like hateful content rules and rules about other kinds of takedown, copyright infringement, and so on. And all of these just end up making him stronger, right? Because what we say is, you need more power so you can enforce these rules that we are imposing on you. But there's another way to do this, which is to get rid of him, right? To abolish Mark Zuckerberg, abolish big tech, to devolve control of technology to its users. The subtitle of the book is Seize the Means of Computation, right? To let people make their own mistakes, which they will make, but to also have the remedy of going elsewhere or changing the rules for themselves.
Right. And I mean, these tech giants here, you also make it clear that this current construction of the internet didn't have to be this way. Like, there was an alternate vision, but then the tech giants became the tech giants. So, I guess if I were to summarize that in one word, I'd use the word enclosure, perhaps, right? In terms of like the way that these tech giants were able to commodify everything on the internet, which once was like there was a promise of it being much freer and more open. And then if I were to summarize the solution in one word, I'd probably say antitrust. So how'd I do, Cory?
Sort of. Yeah, I mean, not bad, right? I think that you're right that there's this element of enclosure, right? The reduction of the internet into what Tom Eastman calls 5 giant websites filled with screenshots of text from the other 4 was like an actual set of policy choices that had this foreseeable outcome and then produced it. And I'd say that the 2 big policy choices, that one follows from the other, was first to draw down antitrust broadly, We're at the tail end of a 40-year experiment in allowing monopoly formation on the grounds that if everyone is using a single product or service, that probably means that that service is something people like, and so we shouldn't do anything to prevent it from forming. And this has produced, across the board monopolies. My last nonfiction book with Rebecca Giblin was called Choke Point Capitalism, and it's about creative labor markets and really about how creative labor can operate in a market where you have 5 giant publishers, 4 giant studios, 3 giant labels, 2 companies that do all the ad tech, and 1 company that controls all the bookings and live performance venues. And that pattern is replicated across many sectors, from beer to bottle caps, banking to intermodal shipping to professional wrestling and cheerleading. You have between 1 and 5 companies controlling entire sectors. And so that's definitely true of tech. And the way that you get there is not the great forces of history bearing down on the moment to produce winner-take-all markets, but rather, permissiveness towards predatory acquisitions. So you have a company like Google that made one good product 25 years ago, a search engine, and then everything else they've made internally, almost without exception, has failed. Their RSS readers and their social media platforms and even their own video platform all failed. But nevertheless, they have grown to be a multi-trillion-dollar company by buying and operationalizing other people's companies, video, ad tech, servers, collaboration, maps. All of these are other people's ideas that they bought. And so historically, that would have been prohibited. And we stopped prohibiting that, so companies could grow by acquisition. Apple buys 90 companies a year. Like Tim Cook comes home with a new company for his shareholders more often than you bring a bag of groceries home to your family. But we also let them do predatory pricing. So they sold goods below cost in order to keep new market entrants out, which let them get bigger and bigger. When Amazon tried to buy diapers.com and were told that diapers.com wasn't for sale, they just started offering diapers at below cost, and $100 million in losses later, diapers.com went out of business. Amazon bought them for pennies on the dollar and then shut them down. And now everybody buys their diapers at Amazon. They made back that $100 million loss many times over by doing this predatory pricing. And again, that was illegal until, roughly speaking, the Carter or the Reagan administration.
Well, I think
so that's one way that you get.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, Cory, I just wanted to talk about that shift there. I mean, you write about Robert Bork and his influence over this kind of antitrust. I would say the allowing of monopolies, right, and the consumer welfare philosophy that he embodied. Can you talk a bit about that and that role in the dynamics you describe?
Sure. Approximately speaking, we used to have this standard for antitrust that was grounded in the idea of harmful dominance. That when a company gets too big, it becomes too big to fail and too big to jail. Some people might have heard of the Sherman Act, the first antitrust act passed in 1890 by Senator John Sherman, who was the brother of Tecumseh Sherman. And when John Sherman was briefing for this law on the Senate floor, he said, if we would not allow a king to rule America, we shouldn't allow an autocrat of trade to determine how we attain the necessities of our lives or work for our wages. And that when a company gets too big, it becomes impossible to discipline either by competition or by regulation, or, these days, I think we would also understand that it becomes impossible to discipline through labor organizing, that really large companies are able to crush their unions unless you get these heroic measures like we've had just very recently, but which we didn't have for a couple of decades there. And so when we get to the Reagan era, you get this guy, Robert Bork. You might know his name from the expression that is so borked.
Yeah.
Borked as an adjective refers to Robert Bork's disastrous performance during his Senate confirmation hearing for the Supreme Court, which went so badly he never got his seat in the Senate. He had been Richard Nixon's Solicitor General. He was just an all-round creep and white nationalist and just several kinds of monster.
Right.
But he went on instead to be a kind of court sorcerer to Reagan, along with people like Milton Friedman, with this idea that monopolies are probably good. That when you see a monopoly in the wild, what it tells you is not that a company has managed to dirty trick its way to dominance, but rather that it's done something so incredibly great that people are just buying their stuff there instead of somewhere else. And so the shift to what was called consumer welfare said that you should only break up monopolies or prevent them from forming if you can show that they are either raising prices or lowering costs as a result of their dominance. So not only would you have to observe something like what we have now, where a company called Luxottica Essilor owns every eyewear brand you've ever heard of, Dolce & Gabbana and Bausch & Lomb and whatnot. They also own every store you've ever bought eyeglasses in. They own Sunglass Hut, and they own Lens Crafters and many other store brands. And they own the largest eyewear insurer, and they make more than 50% of the world's optical lenses. And they've raised the price of glasses by 1,000% in the last decade. But Robert Bork would say, no, that's not a harmful monopoly, because maybe they raised the price of glasses because the price of energy went up, or the price of labor went up, or, the moon is in Venus. And so,
or because COVID happened, right? And
or because of COVID, and supply shocks.
Supply shocks, and seemingly, those continue to extend as corporate profits soar and bonuses are back for executives at the highest level. But apparently it's a leftist conspiracy theory that price gouging is...
Yeah, exactly. Greedflation can't possibly be true, because we have a model where we have a perfectly spherical economy of uniform density gliding around on a frictionless surface where this could never possibly occur. So Bork says you need to use one of these mathematical models to prove what the origin of this is. And by like an incredible coincidence, everybody who knows how to make and interpret these models is an economist at the University of Chicago who makes them for money. And they always show that nothing bad is going on here and the monopoly is good, actually. So that's part one, right? You get this monopolization and the reduction of choice. But it's not just that, which is why the answer in this book is not just antitrust. The other thing that happens when you have concentration in a sector is regulatory capture. When a sector is composed of hundreds of squabbling companies that are actually competing with one another, they can't agree on a set of regulatory priorities. If you think back to the Napster wars, that was a time when a tech sector that was an order of magnitude larger than the entertainment companies just got its ass handed to it in every single forum. And the way that happened was that there were 7 entertainment companies. And they said the same thing to every judge, every regulator, every lawmaker, every policymaker. And there were hundreds of tech companies, and they couldn't even agree on how to cater a meeting where they would negotiate what that policy would be. Now, today, tech is so concentrated, it's got a Habsburg jaw, and it has totally captured its regulators. And that lets it both under and over-regulate tech. On the one hand, you have an under-regulation where things that would be illegal if you did them without an app become somehow legal if you do them with an app, violating your privacy or your rights as a consumer or your labor rights. And on the other hand, we have over-regulation, where the historic tactics used by tech companies themselves to compete, which is reverse engineering and making interoperable devices. So,
that was going to be my next question. Yeah. I mean, because you focus a lot on I can't say it. Interoperability.
I know, it's hard.
Operability.
And it's not just interoperability, it's adversarial interoperability, which talk about a mouthful.
Yeah. But if you could define that's a really important part of your book.
It really is. Interoperability is just a potential for one thing to work with another thing. Anyone's shoelaces go in your sneakers. Anyone's gas goes in your gas tank. Anyone's butter can go on your bread. And the company doesn't get to tell you whose accessories or components or software or whatever you can use. Today, you have companies that have figured out how to lock you into using their apps with their device, to using their client to access their server, to using their ink with their printer, and so on. And it's not really a technical move. It's not that they have figured out how to make a printer that no one can figure out how to reverse engineer and modify so it can take anyone's ink. Instead, they've gotten a law passed that makes that kind of reverse engineering into a felony. In fact, it's a whole suite of laws that today we just call IP law, but it's this thicket of these very exotic legal theories like anti-circumvention and tortious interference with contract and cybersecurity and so on that can all be overlapped with one another to make it illegal to reverse engineer, modify, repair, or alter devices so that they do what you want them to do and not what the shareholders of the company want them to do. It's what Jay Freeman calls felony contempt of business model. So while Apple was once able to save its bacon when Microsoft was killing the Mac by refusing to upgrade Microsoft Office for the Mac, so if you had a Mac, you just really couldn't read Word or Excel or PowerPoint files that the 95% of the market was offering you because they were all using Windows, And rather than just like begging Bill Gates to fix Office for the Mac, they reverse engineered Office and they made iWork, Pages, Numbers, and Keynote just perfectly read and write those files so that you didn't have to choose between using a Mac and being able to talk to Windows users. Or when Facebook kicked off, everyone was on MySpace. And they didn't say, oh, come hang out on Facebook and wait for your friends to wise up and join you here the way we're expected to do today if we leave Twitter for Mastodon. What they did was they gave you a bot where if you gave it your login and password, it would visit Facebook or MySpace several times a day, pretend to be you, get everything waiting for you, and pop them in your inbox on Facebook so that you didn't have to choose between the people you loved on MySpace and the service you preferred on Facebook. Today, if you tried to do that to Facebook or Twitter or Apple, they would bomb you till the rubble bounced. They reduce you to a radioactive crater by saying you were a tortious interferer with contract, that you violated Section 1201 of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, you violated the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. So this felony contempt of business model prevents you from doing unto them what they did unto the companies that came before them. And this is how you end up with companies that have this winner-take-all market. Right? It's not just that they were able to buy their competitors. It's not just that they were able to use predatory pricing. It's not just that they were able to cheat you on your privacy, labor, and consumer rights. It's also that they prevent you from mobilizing technology in your service to allow you to block the parts of the product that you don't like and use the part that you do. Half of the web is using an ad blocker. 0 app users are using an ad blocker because reverse engineering the app is a felony punishable by a 5-year prison sentence and a $500,000 fine under Section 1201 of the DMCA. An app is just a web page that's been wrapped in just enough IP to make it a crime to adapt it so that it doesn't violate your privacy.
Yeah, I mean, and that is, I think, in large part due to the fact that the problems of commodification that you talk about in your book as well, and how there was a moment in the aughts of the internet, essentially, where there was more fair use and there was the ability to have a free and more open internet. But that quickly changed, and I think a lot of people circle the name Bill Gates when it comes to intellectual property in the web. How appropriate is that to draw it to people like him, or at least to have him be the figurehead of some of the enclosure of IP?
Sure. I mean, Gates is definitely in for some guillotining when the time comes, right? But I think that it's a mistake to locate this in the individual moral failings of individuals.
Sure.
They are like amoral monsters, but we created a system that was always going to elevate those people, right? We created a system where the person with the worst ideas in the business would win every argument. Because whereas at one point you could have had someone at Google saying, hey, let's enshitify our product by making maps almost unusable in order to cram it full of lots of ads. And someone else in the room would have said, well, if we do that, maybe the FTC will ding us for unfair business practices. Maybe our competitors will start to poach our users and they'll be able to integrate other maps products with whatever devices they're using and what have you. And also, I would experience a moral injury because I really care about maps. I missed my kids' Little League games to meet our deadlines on this. And it gives me a warm glow to think about all the people who find their way home using this product that I work on. And you know, back then they could win that argument, not just by talking about moral injury, but also by talking about the real business penalties that would arise as a consequence of engaging in this conduct. And today, all that's left is moral injury. Right? All that's left is I'd feel icky if you did this. And they're like, well, money talks and bullshit walks. Right? It's not, you know, that I think that markets solve all of our problems, but I do think markets create a lot more problems if they can operate without any discipline from labor, from users taking self-help measures, from competitors, or from regulators. And so this brings me to the second half of the book, which is really shovel-ready plans for unrigging these markets, for making the internet a better place, for building a new good internet that's a worthy successor to our old good internet, and that makes, you know, the shitternet that we live with now into just sort of an unfortunate transitional phase. And those remedies, yes, some of them are antitrust, for sure. And some of them are things like privacy remedies. And I think, we underestimate, first of all, just how bad privacy law is in this country, but second of all, how politically potent a privacy platform could be. This country has not passed a broadly applicable privacy law since Robert Bork. During the Robert Bork hearings, someone leaked his video records to a newspaper in Washington, D.C., and we got to find out what he was renting. It wasn't even all that embarrassing. But this spooked Congress so badly that they passed a law that criminalizes leaking someone's video records. That's the last time we passed a broadly applicable law on privacy. And in the 25 years since, we have had this bonanza of privacy harms. And there are so many areas where people are really worried about privacy, right? You might be, and some of them are things I don't even agree with, right? Like some people might be, oh, well, TikTok is like an agent of the Chinese government and they're spying on military personnel. And if you're worried about that, yeah, sure. How about we just make them stop spying? Well, right? And maybe you're worried.
Yes. That's just when you hear that, I mean, what screams to me is that's a meta lobbyist essentially freaking out about their losing some of their market
100%.
share for Instagram.
But I don't have to agree with them to agree that privacy would be good. And if they're on my side, then fine. Or if the people they've spooked are on my side. If you think that Instagram is making your daughter unhappy and giving her body positivity problems, well, that's all down to targeting. So let's end the targeting and we end the targeted manipulation. If you think Facebook is using big data to make your uncle a QAnon, well, that's all targeting too. Let's end that. If you're worried that your local newspaper is having 51 cents out of every ad dollar scooped up by Google or Facebook because they're doing surveillance advertising, let's ban surveillance advertising and switch to context-based advertising, where you, instead of auctioning off ad spots based on who's reading an article, you auction it off based on what the article's about, which is something that would always give more power to publishers than it does to advertisers, because while no newspaper, even the New York Times, is ever going to know as much about you as Google and Facebook know, no tech company will ever know as much about a publisher's content as the publisher themselves know. So there is this incredible potential coalition of parties who would say not privacy only, but privacy first. Like, let's fix the privacy area here and see if that doesn't make a big dent in all these things that we all care about, even if we don't all agree that they're problems. We all care about these problems sincerely, and we can make a difference here. So let's start to constrain tech. Let's pass meaningful labor, privacy, and consumer protection laws. And we're seeing this in the FTC suits against Facebook, the DOJ case against Google. We're seeing bipartisan action in Congress in a way that I think most people haven't even twigged to. Like, there's a law in the Senate pending, a bill rather, called the America Act, whose two main sponsors are Elizabeth Warren and Ted Cruz. Right? That is a very bipartisan consensus. Very rare we get that kind of thing. So that's stage two. Stage one, do antitrust. That's what we're getting right now. In the first time in 2 generations, we're seeing regulators in Canada, the UK, the US, the EU, Australia, and even China taking aim at tech companies and wanting to do antitrust, and not just them, but across the board in many sectors. Step two, start enforcing privacy, labor, and fair dealing laws when we're dealing with these tech companies. And step three, restore the right of users and their proxies, be they startups or community groups or tinkerers or hackers or open source projects, to decompose these pre-feast menus where in order to talk to your friends on Facebook, you also have to be spied on by Facebook, into an a la carte menu where you install the blocker that says, yeah, I'm talking to my friends, but you don't get to spy on me, while we're waiting for these regulations to do their job, so that we're not just hoping that enforcers enforce the law that we have, or that lawmakers pass better laws, that we can also seize the means of computation and take our own measures. And my theory for how all of this stuff kind of coheres goes back to my arch nemesis, Milton Friedman, another court sorcerer of Ronald Reagan, who was a stone freak, because you have, in the post-New Deal world, this moment where we have more broadly shared prosperity than any time in American history, wildly imperfect, failing on gender and racial and sexuality lines, not protecting indigenous people as much as it could, but also like creating the base through which we have civil rights movements and gender equity movements and queer rights movements and crip rights movements and so on. And whereas some critics of this consensus are like, it's not going far enough, Milton Friedman was like, it's gone too far. We need to put it all back in a box. And people would say, like Milton, people like, the prospect of their kids going to college or having a dignified retirement or there being Medicare and Medicaid. How are you going to convince them to go back to being forelock-tugging plebs? And he would say, in times of crisis, ideas lying around can move from the periphery to the center. Our job is to keep these ideas lying around so that when the next crisis comes, these ideas can go from being impossible to being inevitable. And say what you will about Friedman, he was fucking right about that, right? That's how we got the world we're living in now. An oil crisis opened the opportunity for him. And if there's one thing that tech is giving us, it's a lot of crises. So, I like to think that now that Satan has taken Milton Friedman to hell and he's been down there since 2006, that when he hears his words in my mouth, he gargles a curse around that red hot iron bar that's protruding from his jaw as the demons turn the spit. But you have to give him credit for having gotten this one right. And, why should we abandon this tactic that he has? So tech gives us all these crises. Every time the crisis emerges, we do the same thing we did last time, but harder, and hope for a different outcome. Producing these shovel-ready ideas, these imaginaries of how things can be better, I think is a way into the next step, which is demanding better the next time the crisis comes.
Yeah. Well, Cory, I really appreciate that imagery, if nothing else. But the discussion was excellent, and I really hope people pick up your book. It's called The Internet Con: How to Seize the Means of Computation. Thanks so much, Cory, for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And the new novel, again, is The Lost Cause, a solar punk climate novel that Naomi Klein and Bill McKibben and Rebecca Solnit all say nice things about.
Well, that is quite a roster of people that appreciate the book. We'll put a link to all of that in the description wherever we're listening to this. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Wherever anyone is listening to this or watching, appreciate it, Cory.
It was great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you. Thank you. All right, folks, quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be joined by Raga Makawi to talk about Sudan. We are back, and we are joined now by Raga Makawi, researcher at the London School of Economics, editor of the magazine African Arguments. Raga, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so much of our focus on the show has been recently about the atrocities in Gaza, obviously, but the humanitarian crisis in Sudan is another dire situation that is not being addressed. Millions displaced, massive refugee crisis, and then, of course, these massacres. If you could just give us a sense of where we are since the fighting broke out in April of this year.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's been 8 months of complete mayhem on the ground. Majority of the population have been displaced to neighboring countries. from what I hear, upwards of 5 or 6 million people have relocated to Egypt and are living under really dire circumstances. Others who were able to made their way down to the east to find refuge in Ethiopia, others all the way down to the south. The population that has remained in Khartoum and in neighboring areas, they're living under really difficult circumstances, with the RSF spread out and controlling exits and entry points into Khartoum. Every aspect of their life is controlled in very problematic ways. So they don't have access to food, no access to electricity, no access to medicine and or life-saving services.
And can you explain for our audience what the RSF is in Sudan?
Sure. So the RSF is short for the Rapid Defense Forces, and it's a paramilitary group that the Sudanese army, which is also the Sudanese state, created in the last 10 years in order to be able to manage the country's unrestful periphery. So militia creation and militia management is a very old governance tactic in Sudan. And the Rapid Defense Forces is just the latest version of a historic mechanism of governance in Sudan.
And why were they created? I mean, the Sudanese armed forces are, the official military kind of structure within the country. They outsourced this to the RSF, and this seems to be like an incredibly destructive force that I would imagine you could see coming, because why are you outsourcing this except to create like essentially a mercenary group with less oversight?
Sure, it's counterinsurgency on the cheap, basically, for a central state that has multiple warring fronts across all of Sudan, as a direct response to their poor governance policies and failure to rule properly, has meant that the army itself is not capable of stepping in at every time and every place and dealing with dissent in a proper way. And so what they do is they arm certain factions and groups with tribal affiliations in certain areas to ensure that they're able to control these areas with minimum amount of intervention and also cost.
Yeah, I mean, and this, like, I remember in the early 2000s, Darfur being in the news, and I was a kid at that point, obviously. But this, just to say, like, this is to underscore how much Sudan has lived through, and the genocide that the Sudanese people have experienced, and then this incredibly horrific violence that's happening today. How does that history of the early 2000s fit into the events of today? Are these groups connected? What is the kind of broader political situation that led us to this moment as well?
Absolutely, yes. So the kind of conflict that we saw take place in Darfur almost 20 years ago to date is emerging or re-emerging once again, although this time with more problematic policies, because back in 2004 and 2005, there was more international appetite to step in and try and resolve Darfur's problem. As you have just said, different kind of interventions led to peace agreements that had, to an extent, managed the situation just at the surface. Below, the structural problems and the root causes of these crises were never resolved, and the state's solution to them was to continue maintaining a low level, a low intense level of securitization and militarization of Darfur and other peripheries through paramilitary groups as this one. And unfortunately, they were again attacking the same this, the same tribes and the same ethnicities that they had back in the day. I mean, there's a sense of continuity with the same politics, but perhaps Sudan has gone through a revolution in the last 5 years. So, I mean, there is a difference in terms of the conditions that shape the current war, but obviously similar tendencies or kind of similarities with 10 years ago do exist.
And that is the targeting of specific groups with violence. Who are the groups that are targeted, and what are the details really of the massacres that we're seeing?
So in Darfur specifically, there have been kind of reports about RSF, which are mostly Arab nomadic groups. They're targeting of Black indigenous tribes, especially in Western Darfur, places like Janina. Groups like Al-Masalit, the horrific killing and butchering of their leadership. And as a result, the influx of refugees from West Darfur into Chad to seek refuge. The kind of the contentious politics that exist between these different tribes with the different kind of ethnic makeups has to do primarily with how the states have managed economic and land relations in a place as diverse as Darfur. Obviously in very, very problematic ways, and by basically arming one group as opposed to the other, favoring one group as opposed to the other, the consequences were dire.
Well, I know you have a heart out, so I wish we could speak for longer, but I really appreciate your time today. Raga Makawi, researcher at the London School of Economics, editor of the magazine African Arguments, and we'll put a link to that magazine in the description wherever you're listening to or watching this. Thank you for your time today. All right, folks, with that, we're going to wrap up the first hour of this program. Yeah, I got lost in my conversation with Cory and then didn't realize she had a heart out at 1, so I had many more questions, but we will be keeping up on this incredibly important story, obviously. So much of what she said, and I listened to her on a podcast, people can look that up. Maybe we'll put a link to that as well if they want to hear more from it, which was on the magazine's website, African Arguments. She speaks about the hyper-militarization of Sudan, and that reminds me of, what Israel is, right? Like, what does that have? What kind of effect does that have on a population when so many weapons and so much money and so much of the state is oriented towards a military mindset? And it is the structural underbelly of systemic violence.
You prepare for violence, you get it.
Yep. Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Damn, I wasn't even here it was my birthday, but we did record a conversation with Vaclav Masic Sanchez about Guatemala and the lawfare going on against Bernardo Arevalo as he tries to take the presidency in January. They have, again, such a long lame duck period that, from whenever September or August when the elections were held to January. That's too long for, I think, Central America. That gives the OAS and, well, I mean, who knows what role the OAS, and I think we get into that in this case, but that's too long of a time to let people do. But yeah, check that out. And also I'm wearing right now. Bradley, if you could drop your, thank you.
Look at that. There he is.
New at the leftreckoning.com/store, I believe is the website. We have new merchandise for the winter, which is this very warm, probably too warm for maybe the studio. I was thinking about opening the window, but there's construction going on. But nice and warm a crew neck sweatshirt that I'm wearing. So check that out.
It is very nice. I love the hat as well that I.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm actually, I don't think people know this because I don't do it for my hair, but I am a hat wearer. I am somebody that
really
doesn't wash my hair too much on the weekend, get the natural oils back, and I'll just throw a cap back on. Yeah.
Like a baseball
cap. Yeah. I got a few ones that I really like. So Maybe I'll just wear the Left Reckoning one on like Casual Friday or something like that. On ESVN today, we are going to give our picks against the spread. Bradley went 3-0 last week. It was a little bit scary for me because this is the time of the year when he starts to heat up. We'll be talking about that, youtube.com/ESVN show at 4 today. That's where we have the most of our fun competing against one another. We've determined that we're going to do like a hot wing style punishment. Whoever loses, more food play. But like I had that beer that Brandon from Kentucky sent that had Tabasco sauce or whatever in it, or jalapeno.
It was a habanero.
Habanero. Holy moly!
Yeah, it was good.
It was good, but like
really spicy.
you instinctively take a drink when you have something spicy to wash it down, and I just kept doing that. But that was the thing that was setting my mouth on fire. So that was a very bizarre thing to experience. Anyway, do we have Brandon and Binder? We have Brandon at least, who's I guess, calling from underneath like the stairs, the Harry
That's
Potter,
that European,
the Harry Potter bedroom, I guess. We can't see, but he, low
we can't
ceilings.
see or hear, Brandon. Oh, now we can.
Okay, I was muted there.
No, your mic is not connected.
We're
you gotta
getting
go to
your,
settings.
this is your
Computer
mic. We're not coming through your actual microphone. Bradley's gonna.
There we go.
Is it better?
Yep.
Yeah.
There you go.
Are you finally settled in?
Oh, trying to be.
Yeah.
We like
What's happening on the discourse, Brandon?
Oh yeah, so we should have an episode out for you this weekend. We are getting into the holiday mood, but ideally we're going to amp up production. And yeah, it's going to be on the ceasefire in Israel, or like rather the end of the ceasefire, and an update on the GOP race. And then we should have another episode coming out about the death of Henry Kissinger.
Very nice. All right, check that out. Binder, what's happening on Scam Economy and Doomed? And hello to you.
Hello, everybody. Scam Economy episode. I promise you all it's coming out soon. But on Doomed this week, basically did an episode looking at a few different clips on a variety of topics. Looked at the, I don't know if you guys watched this, probably did, that Ben Shapiro promoting that Daily Wire movie, Lady Ballers, excuse me. And
Daily Ballers.
Daily Ballers probably would have been a better movie. But Lady Ballers, and he accidentally lets a number of interesting things slip in his promotion. Of it.
Yeah.
And then looked at this TikTok survey study that's been going around to argue that the Free Palestine hashtag and other pro-Palestine hashtags should be banned on TikTok. And then, I looked at the study. Someone reached out to me who looked at the raw data and plotted it in their own way without the I guess you can call it propagandized version that was going around in the form of the charts that you were seeing showing TikTok was somehow super anti-Semitic. And of course, that chart conflated anti-Semitism and anti-Israel rhetoric. But the breakdown of the raw data shows that actually TikTok is below Twitter, television, and a variety of other things. So yeah, check it out. Doomedcast.com for the podcast version of the show.
Is that even if Bender, sorry to interrupt, but is that even if you control for the anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism conflation, or is that actually just looking at anti-Semitism?
What the person who plotted the raw data on, so the person who did the study put out the one conflating anti-Semitism and anti-Israel rhetoric, and the part of the main thing of the study was to show that more time spent on a platform makes you more anti-Semitic or anti-Israel or whatever.
The Nikki Haley special, yeah.
The one that I'm pretty sure that's the study that Nikki Haley was mentioning in the debate yesterday.
The 17%
every half hour.
Yeah.
But what this person who sent me their own plotted, like they looked at the raw data because the raw data is available on GitHub, and they plotted each individual question on its own. So if you look at specific questions, here, if you give me a second, are we in the second half yet or no?
No, yeah, but we can go transition if you wanted to go into that. We can play the Nikki Haley thing.
While we're in the break, I'll pull up some of those question specifically and what the data found. But youtube.com/Matt Binder. If you want to catch the rest of this, you got to go to join us in the fun half.
All right. 646-257-3920. See you there.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy.
Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Danner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. See white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on! Fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy!
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on! Come on! Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Yes, we've been talking about jingle smells in the break. I had assumed that it was a fart joke just because of the I mean, that obviously like Occam's razor, but it's not. It's related to the fact that the guy is a garbage man, right? And that's how he
Garbage day.
Yeah, right. Right.
Sorry.
Well, I don't even know what that's a reference to, but I pretended. Binder, you had something that you wanted to open the fun half with, so let's start there.
Oh, we lost your audio.
We lost
Binder,
your audio.
Actually.
Is no one going to explain?
Am I coming in
what
laggy, or did I fix it?
No, you fixed it.
Okay, cool. Because I turned off the audio because I was coughing, and then I forgot to turn it back on.
Wait,
all right.
Hold on, Brandon. What did you say? And then we'll get into it.
You keep joking about what jingle smells is not, but this is legitimately the first time I'm hearing it. I thought it was, like I said, like Christmas-based, like fart kink.
It's something like
It's like a Sean Hannity produced Rumble movie.
Yes.
About like So some guy basically deputizes himself to be like another
And
Christmas.
he's an anti-woke Santa, and he's a
Yeah.
garbage
Okay.
man that finds all the like woke or the anti-woke toys and
That's
the
right.
garbage.
There's an anti-woke action figure that gets like taken off the shelves, and he tasks himself with like delivering.
And he collects them. Yes,
other
yes.
places.
That sounds terrible. It sounds like bad Santa, but not funny.
That's
Exactly.
I think that was the intention behind the movie.
Yeah, I mean they don't know how to like to create any kind of original thing. They just are so derivative. I mean, Lady Ballers, as you have pointed out on Twitter,
Yeah. Juana
Brandon
Man.
is Juana Man.
No,
Juana Man I was going to say Lady Ballers has none of the artistic integrity that Juana Man actually has. Like, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, no. Jingle Smells is just Jingle all the way. If the Turbo Man action figure was like canceled because somebody put like the N-word into the programming.
Wait,
Yeah.
what? How did I
Oh,
miss
okay.
this?
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Right. Okay. Bender, you want to comment on this Nikki Haley thing?
Yes, sure. So there was a study that was going around. Here, if you want to pull it up, I put the not the one that I just put in there. That's the one from the person who looked through the raw data themselves. But here's the one from it's that last one I just dropped in there, Bradley, from Anthony Goldblum. And basically he says a new survey suggests TikTok is a meaningful driver of a surge in anti-Semitism.
Okay,
Spending at
first
least
my first question is, how is anti-Semitism defined?
Oh, well, wait for this. Spending at least 30 minutes a day on TikTok increases the chances a respondent holds anti-Semitic or anti-Israel views by 17%, compared with 6% for Instagram and 2% for X. And then the actual graph puts on the graph, this is the relationship between platform usage and anti-Semitic / anti-Israel views.
Yeah.
It's almost like if they were the same thing, you wouldn't have to keep doing that clumsy slash thing the whole time.
Exactly.
This is not a
Right.
good survey. But
Right.
so my question would be, was the question asked in the survey document, like or rather whatever like the criteria was it measured as anti-Israel and anti-Semitic separately, and then they combined them in the after, or did they just and like because one was very high and one was very low, it was clear, or were the two conflated in the intake, like or sort of the input as well? Because I mean, either one is terrible. But
yeah,
I wonder
luckily,
if
this
how
person-
bad this is.
Right. So there's still a lot of this data to look through here. But someone has pulled the raw data and plotted some of the specific questions, because basically they asked very specific questions, and this chart that we just pulled up is like an amalgamation of all those questions. Some of them are questions that can be seen as anti-Semitic. Some of them are questions that can be seen as anti-Israel. But those are, like we were just saying, are two distinct things. And you could pull up that other post that I put in there. It's the one I posted before. It accidentally sent twice. I don't know why, but it's the same tweet.
Okay, but these are the questions. Do you want me to read it? Because I have it on the big screen. Compared to other Jewish or to other groups, Jewish people have to the Holocaust just to further their political agenda. Jewish people chase money more than other people do. I mean, that's obviously anti-Semitic. But then here we go. Israel and its supporters are a bad influence on our democracy. Israel can get away with anything because its supporters control the media. And Israel treats the Palestinians like the Nazis treated the Jews. Now, I mean, those final three there clearly are related to Israel's assault on Gaza, I would say.
Right.
And
but if you look at the chart, though, pull it back up, Bradley.
But the two media ones, though, I want to say, like, the first one is anti-Semitic because it's about Jewish people. Israel supporters controlling the media isn't explicitly about Jewish people. It can be, right? But it can also be about the fact that...
Like, I don't know if Dana Bash is Jewish. She's an Israel supporter.
Right. I mean, but like our national
she is,
security establishment and like the white Western power structure has oversized influence in the media, and they are pro-Israel. That's what I would say about that.
Right.
I would also say that it's not surprising that there's a lot of anti-Semitism in America or online or being diffused out there, considering, again, this is the United States of America. I think that's just like to be taken. I think you still shouldn't conflate it with genuine anti-Israel statements and like pro-Palestinian statements at that.
Right. So if you look at that chart, though, you'll see that for pretty much every question, there's this green line that's at the very bottom. Now, with the x-axis is time spent on. So the more time spent on, the more or less someone agrees with those views. Now, that green line is on the bottom for almost every single one. That green line is the TikTok data. The blue line that's on top for almost every single one, that's
is
Twitter.
X. Yeah, Twitter. Yeah. and the ones at the top, the more explicitly anti-Semitic ones, if we can put that back up here. Oh, it is. Sorry. Like you see that Twitter is at the top of every category, but also there's a decrease in the TikTok line there for the most explicitly anti-Semitic ones.
Right. So the more time you spend on TikTok, apparently, the less anti-Semitic you get, unless you conflate the Israel ones on the bottom there, where you see that TikTok rises as you spend more time on there. And because that's really an effect of TikTok being a community that skews very young. It's from its very earliest days. People seem to forget that TikTok started when ByteDance wanted to roll out a US version of TikTok because they have their own one in China. And to do so, they bought another app, another company called Musical.ly, which was basically an app for like young kids and teens to like record themselves lip syncing to music. And they bought that app and they rebranded it as TikTok. So from its very founding, it was already skewing very young. It continues to skew young. And we know young people have pro-Palestine views. I mean, it's not really a chicken or an egg scenario because you could probably find young people who aren't on TikTok who have the same pro-Palestine views. The people are using TikTok to share the views they already hold, and those views just happen to be pro-Palestine.
I would also...
Go ahead.
I just wanted to point out that I think that it's unfair for the X chart not to control for Elon Musk, because I feel like if you just like remove him from the data set, the chart that line goes down like at least 90%.
What if you control for blue checks? Then we're like seeing
it's the least racist platform. It's the least racist platform online.
Oh yeah. Stella the dog writes in saying, "Wow, guys, your anti-Semitism is showing. Jews control the media is anti-Semitism. Israel is Nazis is anti-Semitism. Just wow." I think I literally said that the Jews control the media one is anti-Semitic.
Is anti-Semitism, yeah.
And I don't agree
that is a distinct point. Then media supporters support the state of Israel as it's constructed now, or are as shorthand Zionists, and that is not to say anything about their religion. There's plenty like
Christian
Mike Huckabee
Zionists.
is a Zionist.
Yes.
When I say Zionist, I use Zionist because guess what? Like I don't want to say Israeli, despite the fact that Israeli society is very hawkish with regards to Palestinians. I don't want to say Israelis because there's lots of Israelis that don't support it.
Yeah.
But I do say Zionist because whether you're a liberal Zionist or a right-wing Zionist, I do think like that is the most precise label, despite what people have. And I'll admit, like when I first got into this business, I was skittish about using that word because it has been decoded by the same media we're talking about as meaning anti-Semitism. Surprise, IMer. That's the entire conversation we're having right now as 17,000 Palestinians are killed, right?
And I just want to also say, too, like Israel treats the Palestinians like the Nazis treated the Jews. I mean, I don't think that that's anti-Semitic at all. Like, you can say it's hyperbolic, and you can say that we should be careful because obviously...
And it doesn't rise to the level of Holocaust yet?
Yeah, I mean, the Holocaust, 6 million people, 6 million Jews were killed. Like, that is one of the worst crimes in the history of the world, if not the worst crime. But to say that Israel treats the Palestinians like the Nazis treated the Jews, if you just want to refer to crimes of genocide... Well, take it up with Roz Siegel and other scholars, literal Holocaust scholars, who say that these are crimes of genocide.
Well, and you also have Zionists saying that actually Hamas is the Nazis, which is also a ludicrous comparison. So, yeah, I mean...
Douglas Murray said that the Nazis didn't actually take any pleasure in killing Jews during the Holocaust. They drank themselves almost to death because of how guilty they felt.
I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu says that that Hitler got the idea of extermination from the Palestinian Grand Mufti, which is a complete lie and conspiracy theory meant to continuously, dehumanize the Palestinians and make it so that people in Israel and others believe that the Palestinians are a greater threat to them than Nazis. It's a complete exploitation of the generational trauma of the Holocaust. So I hope that clears it up for you.
Yeah, like obviously the statement Jewish people talk about the Holocaust just to further political agenda, that is blatantly anti-Semitic. The state of Israel does cynically use the legacy of the Holocaust towards ends. And I'm sorry, you can't have a grown-up conversation about this nation state that we give billions of dollars worth of bombs to unless you are willing to be grown up about that,
Yeah,
frankly.
I mean, Sell the Dog is continuously writing in saying you guys should visit the Holocaust Museum. You have no understanding of how the term Zionist was used to perpetuate the Holocaust. I've been to the Holocaust Museum. I'll never forget seeing all the shoes lined up together. And I went there as a kid. And it's one of the, as I just said, it is, if not, one of the worst crimes that humanity has ever engaged in, if not the worst.
Yeah, I'm
and
sorry,
so,
it's distinct.
But Zionism, conflating Zionists with Judaism is.
I think it is fucking offensive
It is
to say that what we're doing is actually preparing the ground for more killing, because I think actually that's what Zionists are doing right now. And all these games that we're playing, we have to be super sensitive about how we describe the killing of, I mean, who is it? Nick Kristof, not a leftist by any sense of imagination, is saying, I'm not sure where what's his name from Current Affairs got this quote from, where Nick Kristof is publishing. But he writes, I'm just trying to pull it up here, that the comparison is, oh yeah, here it goes. Nick Kristof, no less, says that the massacre of Gazan civilians is comparable to the Rwandan genocide. So I guess maybe let's take it out of the context of World War II. Rwanda. Congratulations, Israel. That's the comparison now. If fine, maybe World War II and Nazis and the Holocaust plays too much of a role in how we conceptualize foreign policy stuff. Well, it
plays too much of a role in how we conceptualize. I mean, if genocides can only be considered genocides when they rise to the level of the Holocaust, then oh my God, are we in a world that I don't even want to be in? Because genocides happen at smaller scales. We just had a guest on to talk about genocide in Sudan. So crimes of genocide are crimes of genocide,
yeah.
and that's
we are not setting the table for another Holocaust. Our Secretary of State is going around the Middle East saying, "Hey, we're trying to ethnically cleanse these Palestinians out of this state of Israel. Do you want to take them?" That's where we're at now. And so these phantoms that actually we're doing another Holocaust, I'm sorry, that is a product of propaganda. And that is Israel itself has used that cynically. So I'm sorry, I don't take instruction on this.
And let me also just say too that I believe that the conflation of Zionism with Judaism is inherently anti-Semitic. It's like saying that the only real form of being a Muslim is to be a religious fundamentalist or a religious nationalist. The only form of being a Christian is to be a Christian nationalist. That is playing right into the hands of the most extreme members of a religion or of an ethnicity, and it's been used by the Israeli government to cover for their crimes.
It's being used right now.
Yeah.
Right now, where's Benjamin Netanyahu saying, look at all these protests in the West. We need to push back on that. That's the pushback.
Yeah.
The pushback is Stefanik pretending any sort of chant saying Intifada is actually, no, we want a second Holocaust, as opposed to a resistance to a colonization. It's a deliberate misinterpretation for a hysterical propaganda value. That's what we're seeing right now from people who are killing civilians by the thousands.
Gerald from New Orleans says, funny how the accusations of anti-Semitism roll in on a day when Sam isn't in. I'm sure that's a total coincidence. Well, yeah.
I'm here though.
Yeah,
and
there you are.
I'm Ashkenazi Jewish, so I mean.
There you go.
Yeah,
there you go. I didn't know that actually.
I typically don't bring it up because I don't I don't think it matters. I should be able to criticize Israel, and I should be able to be against the being anti-Zionist, because I mean, fundamentally, Zionism is a right-wing sort of ideal. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, it's looking to create. It's a nationalist movement. It's looking to create a state for a specific that puts a specific group of people above everybody else. I mean, we're not fine with like Saudi Arabia. We're not fine with other like fundamentalist Muslim countries.
And sorry to jump in, Binder, but we also say that country has too much influence on our politics.
Yes.
Right. And like here in the US, most like even like resistance libs, like just the anti-Trump people, they see Republicans, like the hardcore Christian Republicans, and they call them like the American Taliban and all those other ridiculous things they call them, because Christian fundamentalism is rightly seen as a far right-wing thing, a far right-wing ideal that we want nothing to do with. But for some reason, when it comes to Zionism, it's fine for certain people to have that feeling. It's fine for that. It's the equivalent to that right-wing Christian nationalism. It's the equivalent to fundamentalist, like hardcore Islamic ideals and movements. They all overlap. It's the same thing, just for that particular religion.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Judt, I'm sure you're familiar with this piece, Binder, but Tony Judt in New York Review Books, 2003, called Israel the Alternative. I'll just read a little bit. Here it is. In a world where nations and peoples increasingly intermingle and intermarry at will, where cultural and national impediments to communication have all but collapsed, where more and more of us have multiple elective identities and would feel falsely constrained if we had to answer to just one of them, in such a world, Israel is truly an anachronism, and not just an anachronism, but a dysfunctional one. In today's clash of cultures between open pluralistic democracies and belligerently intolerant faith-driven ethnostates, Israel actually risks falling into the wrong camp. To convert Israel from a Jewish state to a binational one would not be easy, though not quite as impossible as it sounds a little bit later. The process has already begun de facto, but it would cause far less disruption to most Jews and Arabs than its religious and nationalist foes will claim. In any case, no one I know has a better idea. Anyone who genuinely supposes that the controversial elective fence... people should read that piece, because it's exactly what Binder said. It's an ethno-state. There was say defensible reasons for constructing that, or that, like, the world powers pursued that project after the Holocaust, obviously, despite the fact that colonial projects were going out of fashion then. But it failed, and it failed the exact same way. I'm sorry, you watch the Battle of Algiers. This is the exact same way these fail. And you need to have a different relationship. And obviously the relationship with Israelis and Palestinians is different between the French and Algeria. Because I do think, like, as Ilan Pappy says, there is, despite like objectively being a settler colonial project, that people there now, the Israelis, the Jewish settlers, have an organic tie to the land. So that's why we don't say, like, actually they all have to be removed or pushed out to the sea, for instance. Yep. That's not our position. Our position is that everybody lives and has full political rights.
A multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy.
Simple.
Yeah.
Less nationalism.
All right, well, I think we covered that bunk... what do you call whatever that was, study that was referenced by Nikki Haley last night.
It is amazing though that, like, you know, there was a quote the other day, apparently Joe Biden at like some sort of campaign stop or something. I think he was in like Massachusetts. He said he was a Zionist, which, I mean, obviously he is, but like the idea that disagreeing with that Irish Catholic means you're an anti-Semite is ludicrous. It's just ludicrous.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. When I say Zionist, I mean Joe Biden.
Yes.
But also,
hold on. I feel like Brandon wanted to jump in. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the only thing I was going to add was I think we also have to understand that we live in a world where identity is often very atomized. Especially since, like, the neoliberal project has removed, like, material conditions and large structural changes from people's understanding of how to actually, like, uplift and empower minority communities. Now what you have is an understanding of people as, like, belonging to either oppressed groups or groups that are inherently capable of being the oppressor. And a lot of people just have a really hard time understanding, despite throwing around like words like intersectionality, that kind of stuff is fluid. That in Israel, it's very possible that they, by nature of living in an ethno state of their own creation, are actively oppressing Arab minority because of their background. And Jewish people can still be an ethnic minority in the world at large, and even a protected group in some countries where they're the ethnic minority. And those two things aren't really in contradiction to one another. It's just about the context that these things exist within. But in the United States, I think a lot of people, it's the whole like, how can Kamala Harris be bad for Black people? She is Black argument. It's a way for people to, obscure the larger conditions of what we're talking about by just like referencing someone's or one part of someone's identity. And so, it's something that we just have to get over, because it's very easy for people to, in this case, adopt Zionism as their sort of like identity, even if they're like Christians or Catholics, and then become a mouthpiece for an oppressed group that is supposed to like short circuit any real conversation.
Yeah. Well, I want to play the Stefanik clip because we have to start to dismantle these efforts at silencing people brick by brick. And the latest moral panic is surrounding college campuses and the pro-Palestine demonstrations that have occurred on college campuses, in part because, as Binder was talking about earlier in reference to TikTok, the reason that there's more pro-Palestinian sentiment on TikTok is because younger people use TikTok, and younger people are more pro-Palestinian. And so that's why you're seeing these demonstrations on college campuses. And, have there been instances of anti-Semitism in some of these demonstrations? I don't doubt that. I don't doubt it.
Absolutely.
And I believe it quite, I believe that there, that is quite, that is very likely. I mean, even in demonstrations outside of college campuses, pro-Palestinian demonstrations, have there been instances of anti-Semitism? Certainly, obviously. I don't like the idea that in Philadelphia, they were going after that restaurant owner, right?
Sorry, but that restaurant fired. There's some labor stuff going on with that restaurant, and I know the optics, but I also think like we can understand something a little bit deeper than that. I'm
just trying to be generous here,
yes,
and say that we shouldn't be inherently dismissive of that.
Yeah. Although also I will say, if you're a business owner and you fire somebody for showing solidarity with Palestine, I think you should be protested.
Yes. With all that said, though, the construction here by Elise Stefanik and this clip that is going around is in bad faith. She asked here the presidents of MIT, Penn, and Harvard whether calling for the genocide of Jewish people would constitute harassment. And, I would think
obviously
it should, right? Of course. But the presidents of these schools here kind of equivocate, and they say that it depends on the context whether it rises to harassment. And the context, though, of their equivocation is that representatives like Stefanik are trying to say that the usage of the term "from the river to the sea" is a call for genocide, among other things. And so and the term intifada. And that is what Stefanik is referring to as calls for genocide. And if that is the definition, then the equivocation by the presidents is certainly justified, in my opinion.
And I just decode like intifada. First intifada, the imagery was rocks thrown at tanks.
Yeah.
Second intifada was more suicide bombings, which is a tactic I absolutely condemn. I think that's horrifying, and I don't think it's been productive to go down that route either. But that said, intifada obviously has multiple meanings, and I think the broad, just the dictionary one. Is uprising and that sort of thing. So again, this is like the same way my entire adult life we freaked out at the word jihad, regardless of context that was put in. It's just because it's a scary Arab word,
right? And so that's that all of that prelude is to just give you the proper understanding of where Stefanik is coming from.
Dr. Kornbluth, yes. At MIT, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate MIT's code of conduct or rules regarding bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
If targeted at individuals, not making public statements.
Yes or no? Calling for the genocide of Jews does not constitute bullying and harassment?
I have not heard calling for the genocide for Jews on our campus.
But you've heard chants for intifada.
I've heard chants which can be anti-Semitic depending on the context, when calling for the elimination of the Jewish people.
So those would not be according to the MIT's code of conduct or rules.
That would be investigated as harassment if pervasive and severe.
Ms. McGill, at Penn, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules or code of conduct? Yes or no?
If the speech turns into conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
I am asking specifically calling for the genocide of Jews. Does that constitute bullying or harassment?
If it is directed and severe or pervasive, it is harassment.
So the answer is yes.
It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman.
It's a context-dependent decision. That's your testimony today. Calling for the genocide of Jews is depending upon the context. That is not bullying or harassment. This is the easiest question to answer yes, Ms. McGill. So is your testimony that you will not answer yes?
If it if the
yes
speech
or
becomes
no?
if the speech becomes conduct, it can be harassment. Yes.
Conduct meaning committing the act of genocide? The speech is not harassment? This is unacceptable, Ms. McGill. I'm going to give you one more opportunity for the world to see your answer. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's code of conduct when it comes to bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be harassment.
The answer is yes. And Dr. Gay, at Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
What's the context?
Targeted as an individual, targeted at an individual.
It's targeted at Jewish students, Jewish individuals. Do you understand your testimony is dehumanizing them? Do you understand that
Yeah, so this is going viral among, like pro-Israel circles.
Morons.
And I just want to say, they try to get out of they could have been clearer in saying, can you point to an instance
Yeah,
of this
they failed, and they should be embarrassed as leaders. All they need to say is, actually, I don't think Intifada is a call for genocide, you moron. Yeah.
And as you guys are saying,
and it's not
what are you
sorry,
alluding
Bradley,
to?
just one second.
Yeah, no.
It's not directed at the idea that protesters on campuses are directing at just fellow Jewish people as being Jews and not at the state of Israel to stop what it is doing is hysterical lies. And Stefanik knows she's lying. I forget her background, but like that is. She's not the CIA one, right? That's somebody else.
That's Slotkin.
Right. But anyway, like this is you are an idiot if you. And honestly, we need better. Ivy League not sending their best because it should be simple to say. Actually, that's not how to decode that. If they were saying specifically, we should genocide Jewish people. Yeah, those people would be suspended.
Of course, and the line of questioning is what you hear, in terms of the logical fallacy of the question, like when will you stop beating your wife, right? Or have you stopped beating your wife? That is essentially how her line of questioning is constructed, which is that there is a mass problem on college campuses of the calling for genocide of Jews, which is just not the case. And it's interesting that the Harvard representative there was not asked, and of course she isn't, about the well-funded right-wing efforts on the Harvard campus to dox, which you can look up, all of the students that signed the pro-Palestine letter in the wake of October 7th, including trucks in Harvard Square,
screens reading their names
with their names and LED lights calling them an anti-Semite.
But I would just also say, like, as you guys are pointed to, like one of them could have actually just been like, what exact are you alluding to specific instances on our campuses where that is literally being, I mean, even if it comes across as pedantry, it would be good to know what actual instances Elise Stefanik is pointing to, where she believes that MIT, Harvard, or UPenn students are explicitly calling for the genocide of Jews. And also, to be honest, like this is also it's crazy how this has been laundered already so quickly from Elise Stefanik, the number 4 Republican in the House. She's one of the most disingenuous members. She's basically Nancy Mace from upstate.
Mhm.
Like she is she's a constant foil for Democrats, and yet now Andrew Bates, a spokesperson for Joe Biden, is responding to this, saying obviously it shouldn't be difficult to condemn the calls for genocide. And Josh Shapiro, who's a non-voting member on the board of the University of Pennsylvania, kind of wants Meg McGill to resign.
Yeah,
this stuff is it's a piece of paper flowing in the wind that's just continuing to gain speed and gravity. At this
Shapiro,
point.
the governor of Pennsylvania, is
governor.
a non-voting member of the board. Interesting. Okay.
At the end of the day, though, like this is just like ludicrous that like fine if people involved in the college wanted to deal with this, fine, but it's ludicrous that this is a national news story while what's going on in Gaza is happening. Like we are arguing over whether they're arguing over whether not even arguing over whether the word intifada means genocide of Jews. They're just outright agreeing that's the fact, while there is mass killing going on in Gaza right now over what is it? We're at 20,000 deaths or approaching that number.
17,000 officially, but that's more likely the numbers, and it's been 2 months.
The two Palestinian intifadas, they were over a course each 5 years. That's 10 years total. I'm looking at numbers right now that say that over those 10 years, around 1,000 people on the Israeli side died. That includes soldiers too. On the other side, obviously, way more Palestinians died during both intifadas, because Palestinians always get the worst of the brunt.
Yeah, because Israel's not going to start until that's the case.
Yeah, I mean,
So
just children, Matt. Just children is 7 times that already in 8 weeks.
So we are right now arguing over whether, not even arguing, we are admitting that the 2 intifadas mean genocide of all Jews, but we're also simultaneously, I'm talking about the people who are involved here, because they all agree here that what Israel's doing is not genocide, or at least not yet. 17,000 plus deaths, but this isn't genocide, but we're arguing over intifada. It's ludicrous, and it's meant to keep us from stopping to talk about what's going on right now. Every single thing. Again, if you're involved in the college, if you're in that world, this is obviously a conversation for you. The fact that this is a major national news story, though, is ludicrous.
I mean, exactly. And even if you want to confine it to fucking college, how about the universities in Gaza that are being bombed? How many of those, are we 11 now? At least 11 buildings? Or how about domestically? 3 supporters of, I don't know if they're Palestinian, but supporters of Palestine wearing keffiyehs shot in Vermont.
Yeah.
One of them paralyzed for life.
Yep.
And yet we're having this song and dance because basically Zionists are acting scared about language. And it's appalling. And I think that, they can, every ounce that they give you an outrage, you return right back, because what Israel and Zionists, the effect that they have had on our politics is exactly what Binder's talking about. It's to throw sand in people's eyes as thousands of people are being bombed, and make us feel like we're the bad ones. No, I mean, yeah.
No,
I saw this great video of a guy at a protest, and he's being interviewed by like BBC or something, and he's asked, they ask him about why he's at this pro-Palestine rally, and the interviewer says, but what about October 7th? And then he responds in a great way. I don't know if this was from this guy originally, or if he's seen other people do this, but then he replies, okay, but what about October 8th, October 9th, October 10th, October, and he went down the whole line into November, because I guess that was when it was. And I mean, that should be the reply to all of this, of this. You are distorting and trying to take away what's going on, and trying to deflect, I should say, from what's going on right now.
Yeah,
I wish we could focus on the innocent civilian hostages that were taken by Hamas and freeing them. Israel is making that impossible.
Or I wish that we could focus on the concerns of students of like hate crimes domestically in the United States, when it comes to anti-Semitism and the increase of anti-Semitism. If that were the most pressing issue, if there weren't hundreds of Palestinians being murdered brutally, maimed beyond recognition, maggots infesting their wounds, children crying that will never see their parents ever again. If that wasn't happening on a daily basis, like I really have nothing but contempt for the people that privilege their own like experience in these cozy Western established institutions like Harvard or MIT, honestly.
And try to pervert them and destroy freedom for other people for it so they can feel safe from a fucking postcard.
Right.
Also, not to minimize.
Yeah, go ahead,
sorry. Not to minimize what's going on in Israel and Palestine, but this is also people like Republicans taking shots at organizing on the left. This is another way for them to try to broadly weaken leftist organizing, because we are in a time of, record-setting labor victories. The pro-Palestinian protests have been gigantic and constant since October 7th. And if they don't trouble that, if they don't make that taboo, there is, I'm sure, a fear that it will spill over into other issue areas, especially if the government the government is so obstinate on ensuring at the very least a ceasefire.
Yeah, right.
I do want to pull out not somebody I normally like to tout his writing, Jonathan Chait, who is a guy who has, I think, fanned the flames of the let's be paranoid about what's going on college campuses with regards to free speech, but nonetheless he's consistent here, at least. Stefanik was defining it even more aggressively, though, by using shorthand, calling for the genocide of Jews. As stunning as it may be, globalizing the Intifada does not mean genocide. I appreciate Chait making that point. Yeah. Even worse, Stefanik was trying to collapse the distinction between speech and conduct when she said incredulously, conduct meaning committing the act of genocide. No, conduct does not have to mean committing genocide. It can mean vandalism, shoving, invading people's personal space, or violating content-neutral rules regulating time, place, and a manner of demonstrations. Now, the last one I'm less interested in. What Stefanik was demanding was the wholesale ban on rhetoric or ideas that Jews find threatening regardless of context. A university should protect students from being mobbed or having their classes occupied and disrupted. But should it not protect them from an op-ed in a student newspaper calling to globalize the Intifada, or a demonstration in an open space demanding from the river to the sea? That would entail a wholesale violation of free speech, which, in addition to the moral problem it would create, would likely backfire by making pro-Palestinian activism a kind of forbidden rebellion then, as many students currently find an irritant. I mean, that's Chait. I will remind folks that Jonathan Chait, when he was a college student at the University of Michigan, was saying, why is all my college associates, why are they so obsessed with this South Africa stuff? So he's a stick in the mud liberal loser,
right,
but at least he's defending coming to his senses about here, where so many people aren't.
Well said. Rob from Denham says tone policing people on what isn't genocide is an intentional distraction from actual genocide ongoing. It reminds me of 2020 when the protests had people saying defund the police, and people lost their minds, saying that people want the destruction of policing instead of what most people want, reimagination and restructuring of what policing looks like. People keep saying that essentially, and criticism of Israel is, quote, calling for the destruction of Israel. Do we want it destroyed? No, but it definitely needs reformation. The past 75 years have shown that. And I get the focus now is on Gaza, but the violence and lack of Palestinian rights in the West Bank cannot be ignored, because once Israel is done devastating Gaza, they are going to set their sights on the West Bank. Well said, Rob. Jingle Smells production assistant says Stefanik will have a tough re-election. Her district comes so far south that it includes parts of Troy in the capital region. This is her re-election bid. And with the state of New York's Democratic Party, it will probably work. I will also say, that I'd imagine that this public display will be very good for her campaign in terms of the amount of money that she'll raise from pro-Israel groups. Let's take a call really quickly. Calling from a 636 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Chris in Crown Heights, Brooklyn.
Chris in Crown Heights. What's on your mind?
First of all, I just wanted to say something about Bernie Sanders. I graduated from college in 2008 and kind of did the regular volunteer stuff for the Obama campaign. And then like within a year, it was very clear where that presidency was headed. And I got like very cynical and just kind of like dropped out of, you know, doing anything political for a long time. Really until like the 2019 or, you know, until 2019 getting involved with Bernie's campaign. And, you know, I just looked back and I realized like I lost a lot of time when I could have been, you know, learning and growing politically and contributing. And, you know, I guess I'm kind of thinking about like people who might be in a similar position right now, like looking at how Bernie has been like equivocating and not talking about a ceasefire. And, you know, maybe their first contact with getting engaged politically was with Bernie's campaign. And they might also be kind of feeling cynical right now. So I just want to say, like, don't drop out of politics. Don't stop fighting for what you believe in. Just because this person that you really admired and that you did work for is coming up short in this moment. Because it's not about like one person. It's about a bigger movement. And then another point I wanted to make is like, so I'm not Jewish, but I grew up with Jewish people in my life, like my whole life. And to the extent that like I always wanted to be, you know, sensitive to, you know, about anti-Semitism, really tried to take in a lot of like, what are the tropes and what are the things that we need to be like on guard for? And one of those is like something we've kind of been talking about a lot lately, which is like, you know, this sort of like dual loyalty trope. And I've just been seeing a lot lately how the sort of like Zionist side wants to kind of play it both ways. It's like they want to have that trope still be like ensconced into like the thinking of, you know, like that is absolutely anti-Semitic. But then on the other side, they want to be able to like, you know, say like, oh, well, you shouldn't equate these two things because, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, I'm kind of a little nervous.
Well, no, it's
moment,
okay.
but,
You're saying
but
the Zionist construction is one of dual loyalty, so it feeds into an anti-Semitic trope that you've grown up with.
But also, like, one thing in our politics, I mean, Avi Shlaim talks about AIPAC as basically representing both Christian and Jewish Zionists desiring to treat Israel as if it's the 51st state. And a lot of these things sound like things you're not supposed to say because of associations with anti-Semitism, which obviously is a horrible thing. But like, that's just the reality of our politics with regards to how these things are playing. But it's not because like Jews as individuals are like, again, like maybe like it's weird being like, because again, like Binder's on the show, Sam, like I work with Michael Brooks, like actually most Jews that I've met in my life as coming from North Dakota and then moving into New York and getting involved in this are anti-Zionist or at least like post-Zionist or something like that. Like so like I don't know, I feel like it's a trope that's dying, but
well, just certainly with younger folks.
Yeah.
I also think there's a big divide in class in who's Zionist and who's not. Like,
you know what's interesting is they've done splits and like education actually doesn't have a huge impact, but you know what does is a color of your skin and white people.
Race, yes. I saw a specific survey on New York, and pretty much every category, 18 to 50, 18 to 49, or 18 or like something even younger perhaps, but 18 to 49, pro-Palestine, Black, Latino, Asian. You go through the demographics. The two groups, I should say, that are consistently pro-Israel are white people and older people over the age of 50.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it early on with like the congressional or the group from Congress that was first calling for a ceasefire. Like there were no white people there. Chiose, who's a great New York City councilor from Bed-Stuy, posted yesterday a photo of the city council members who are calling for a ceasefire. No white people. Yeah, like that's a really stark reminder of kind of like who like inherently gets the argument here and who like is being able to sort of recognize their own struggle in this struggle. So thank you very much.
Well, and you see this with it was the Israeli spokesperson saying this is, and Dave Rubin also, this is actually like they're attacking the West, not just Jewish people. And we played the Barnaby Rain clip where he's like, yeah, I was trying to get people to vote for Jeremy Corbyn, but I would knock on doors of people who like skewed right wing, and they would say, yeah, he supports immigrants too much, and also he's anti-Semitic.
Yeah,
and it's like, yeah, it's exactly where we're at.
Exactly. Sell the Dog keeps writing in, and this is just such a gross comment that I just want to read it. Michael Brooks would embrace complexity, not say this is about brown people. What a sad legacy if that's what you think he left you.
Yeah, Michael Brooks, I think, explicitly said it's not complex, but thanks for the comment. And like as to the like
you
again,
got a
like
lot of nerve.
I actually don't think it is just about skin color. I think it's about a settler colonial structure, as I say over and over again, despite what like how it's pulling in America and what white people are, which is not great.
All right, calling from a 650 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, is this me?
This is you.
Hi, this is Majid from California. I have a question regarding, there's a lot of, this is regarding what's happening in Gaza. And, there's a lot of focus on, yes, we are blaming, look, I blame the state of Israel for doing this. My main concern is, or my lack of understanding is why ultimately we are helping them.
I think it's a number of reasons. For one, obviously, we view them as our strongest ally in the Middle East, and of course, we want someone there who basically listens to whatever we say, so we can, we want to have some sort of position of authority over there for various different reasons. And then,
can I just say, Binder, I think you're right about that, but I also think it hasn't worked out that way, and it's actually undercut our ability.
Oh, absolutely, but don't tell.
You're right.
You're absolutely right, but they don't think that. They think it's absolutely I think that there's also a position of I think people have this sort of because I think you're seeing the rhetoric, the pro-Israel sentiment from a lot more older people, because I think there's some sort of guilt involved too for the Holocaust and World War II and anti-Semitism.
Sure. Yep.
Biden has basically
100%
Biden has basically just to add to your point, Binder, Biden has spoken about a conversation he had in the 70s with Golda Meir about this very topic and how it changed him. And, he views the state of Israel being a Jewish homeland as reconciliation for the unimaginable crimes of the Holocaust. And I think a younger generation see that as misguided. And in fact, the Zionist project does more to endanger Jews when because of its exclusionary nature and because of like the heavy militarism that Israel engages in and how armed to the teeth it is. I believe that the far right Zionist project actually endangers Jews more than it helps. But the most people in government, especially of Biden's generation, do not agree.
I mean, just look at how we could see it. We could see it online with like various known from well before this most recent issue. Many well-known white supremacists and like neo-Nazi like online figures are using this whole situation to try to galvanize the ranks, grow the ranks. That's where your legitimate anti-Semitism is coming from. Yet, they're able to use this to sort of, buoy their own actual anti-Semitic rhetoric.
Yeah, and I also just want to comment on the, I do think the actual, the Holocaust absolutely motivated, I think, on the not condemnable motivations. But I will say it's a little bit interesting that Europe, to make up for its own anti-Semitism, decided to not give, like say, Jewish people Berlin and the surrounding areas, but land that they had colonized previously. And And for instance, Germany was, after reunification, Israel was the first state to recognize the newly reunified Germany in the early 90s. And that is partially why Germany is, I think, so insane in saying Greta Thunberg is like borderline committing treason when she stands with Palestinians.
Right.
But yeah.
I mean, the whole rhetoric we hear about how, like, oh, Israel needs their own state because there's no place other than Israel where Jewish people are safe, which, I mean, what we're seeing is obviously not true. But even without that, that's like a self-tell. Like, what you're saying that Jewish people are going to be killed in modern day Europe, in modern America, in modern anywhere in the world?
Because that's where the anti-Semitism that the Holocaust came from.
Are you anti-Semitic? Because you're saying you can't guarantee their safety because of their Jewishness?
Yeah. So, and sorry to just one more comment here, and I'll drop off. I appreciate the response. I just wanted to say, so I'm worried about, like we are basically, it's our tax dollars that are funding ultimately blowbacks that are, as you said, are hurting the Jewish people in Israel. It's going to come back here. That's what I'm worried about. I'm not saying that's a
real worry.
For sure it's going to come. I'm hoping.
I mean,
so, and I just, I think that's even for us, like we shouldn't be doing that. Like we should be helping them in a different way.
I agree with you.
We're making terrorism worse, absolutely, by doing this. And our support for Israel and inability to work towards whether it was a two-state solution or actual, just not dispossessing and making sure refugees can't come back to the place they're dispossessed from. That is what's causing these problems, not religion, which is the narrative that people want to present itself. And, like we talked about the history of anti-Semitism in Europe, and obviously the Catholic Church and Christianity is, I think, where you put a lot of that doorstep and the sort of cynical reasons it was employed for that reason. But I'm reading Avi Shleim's memoir, just about finished, 3 Worlds, Memoirs of an Arab Jew, and he talks about, like, it again, this isn't religion, it's nationalism.
Yeah.
Like why he, as a Jewish child born in Baghdad to relative affluence, had to leave Baghdad was because of nationalism. It wasn't because the religious, there was a lot of, as he says, religious coexistence prior to that, and then all of a sudden we're doing these nationalist projects, not only the state of Israel, but prominently the state of Israel, and that led to this sort of schism. So, like, this is not a 1,000-year thing. This is about a 75-year thing, and we know what the problems are, and we just need people to stop obscuring it by saying Intifada is actual, like, a Holocaust Jewish people thing, and not a let's say, radical anti-colonial slogan.
I remember I was surprised when I found out that I qualified for, like, the birthright trip, because I didn't go. I mean, it was too late when I found out, actually. But because like my dad's Jewish, and I wasn't raised religiously Jewish, even though ethnically I'm Jewish. So I assumed, and from what I was told, at least here in the US by Jewish people that I've known, it's that, it's if your mother is Jewish, then you're considered a real, even
right.
Yeah. If you're not raised Jewish religiously, if your mother's Jewish, you still are no matter what. If your father is, no. But apparently, if your father is Jewish or you have just Jewish ethnicity, you could go back home to Israel, even though you've never been there before.
Yeah, you can. Well, they need more Jewish voters for that democracy.
Right. Okay, let's do this Donald Trump thing, 8 and 9, if that's okay. So Trump did an interview on Tuesday, I guess this was, with Sean Hannity, and you will recall that Hannity's name appeared quite a bit in the January 6th files because of how closely coordinated he is with the Trump orbit. So this is as softball of an interview as you could possibly get, and it seems like he's trying here to tee Trump up to say, I won't be an authoritarian dictator. And Trump can't answer the question. Hannity asks it 2 times and tries to clarify on the second time. This is the first time where Trump just kind of softly dodges it.
They want to call you a dictator. You use the words, I am your retribution. And now before that, you said if you've been wronged, and you used other words as well. But I want to be very, very clear on this. To be clear, do you in any way have any plans whatsoever, if re-elected president, to abuse power, to break the law, to use the government to go after people?
You mean like they're using right now? So, in the history of our country, what's happened to us, again, has never happened
Not
before.
just me.
Over nonsense, over nothing, made up charges. I often say Al Capone, he was one of the greatest of all time, if you like criminals. He was a with Scarface, they call him. And he got indicted once. I got indicted 4 times. I wonder what my father and mother would say looking down.
We had a lot.
All right, so that was not really an answer.
What do you think about the GOAT argument of criminals?
Yeah, right.
It's Al Capone.
One of the
Look, it was
greatest
a different
of all time.
game back then. The game's changed a lot now. Technology's changed it, the way people train and plan things. But yeah,
I mean, he has 91 charges against him.
Well,
like, I mean,
also-
what were they able to get Capone on?
Tax evasion, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because he was better at hiding his crimes.
Yes,
that's not like
right.
that's not like a point for you, Trump. Like you're worse at hiding your crimes than like one of the. I guess that's what made him greatest of all time.
if Capone ran for president and won, I think honestly we probably would have broken some of these records earlier.
Records?
Yeah.
Okay,
so I mean, Capone was really good at hiding stuff. Like Geraldo opened the safe, and there was nothing in there.
Oh,
the
yeah.
FBI went into Mar-a-Lago and found boxes of shit all over the place
next to the bathroom.
Yeah, Capone would have like known where to hide his stuff as opposed to it being reading material on the cold toilet. But like, okay, so this is Hannity asses the second time. Okay, just to clarify. You wouldn't be an authoritarian, you wouldn't be a dictator, you wouldn't abuse power, and this is how Trump reacts and responds.
We almost have to go to a break. I want to go back to this one issue, though, because the media has been focused on this and attacking you. Under no circumstances. You are promising America tonight you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
Except what?
Except for day one.
Meaning?
I want to close the border and I want to drill.
That's not retribution. I'm
going to be.
As the audience cheers.
We love this guy. He says, "You're not going to be a dictator, are you?" I said, "No. Other than day one.
He repeats
closing
it.
the border, and we're drilling. After that, I'm not a dictator."
So that sounds to me like you're going back to the policies when you were president. All right, take a break. Just getting started. We're in beautiful Davenport, Iowa. Donald Trump with us for the hour as Hannity continues. Thank you for being with us.
He says, except on day one.
Original gangster right there, Donald Trump. I mean, what is he doing? What is he planning with this? I mean, he knows his audience, his crowd loves it. But I mean,
well, it's amazing. It's amazing with Hannity too that he what Trump's I think most I would say for his audience and his supporters, his most magical quality is this self-referential aspect he has where he sort of knows that he's doing something when he's doing it, even though it might not be particularly wise or prudent or whatever. Because he absolutely knows that Hannity is trying to give him an out.
Yes.
And that Hannity is quailing when he won't take it. So he's literally almost making fun of Hannity at the same time, being get a load of this guy. We love him, right? He's sweating through his freaking boot.
But he's right.
Shivering in his boots that I'm saying I'm going to be a dictator. I really am, though, by the way. I really am.
Well, because the number one thing his fans love most about Trump is his ability to trigger the libs. And him saying he'd be a dictator is the number one, troll move.
Yeah,
he's not playing. It's him not playing the rules as a normal politician again. I mean, and I shouldn't. You can't expect anything better than Hannity. But how are we babies?
Yeah.
Do we even define dictator? Trump is not going to be a dictator. He's going to be a fascist demagogue. But the courts, he doesn't entirely control the courts. What do we even mean by that? It's just the big bad word to assign to somebody.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's also going back to Hannity, Republican media and Republican sycophant 101, which is to try to minimize any concerns about what they're going to do with power.
Yes.
And so, of course, he has to get up there and go people say that you're going to be a dictator, that you're going to start, prosecuting your political enemies. You're not going to do that, right? They're just overreacting. And he's like, yes, I am going to do that.
Right.
And so that just short circuits the average Republican, media I think, position, which is that like libs freak out over nothing. Republicans are just any other leaders, and they're just mad that they didn't win. When it's like, no, Republicans are uniquely like.
No, but they'll shift the goalposts there too, and then say like, "Well, he just said on day one. I mean, he just said he'd be a dictator on day one." So, I mean, the libs just got to relax.
And also, the thing is, what's funny is that Hannity, of course, as you said, Matt, like bar on the floor in terms of like actually interrogating this question. But like Hannity would never be like, "No, wait, what about Schedule F and the and Project 2025, where you basically want to purge the administrative state of all of the bureaucrats unilaterally by executive fiat? What about just unilaterally invoking the Insurrection Act to send shock troops into cities to quell protests? What about just sending special forces to the border to basically completely shut it down?" He's not going to go to refer to those potentially or more dictatorial aspects that Trump is invoking because he wants those things to happen.
Yes.
Like, he's not concerned about those aspects of a potential so-called Trump dictatorship because, like, Hannity would be cool with that and nothing would happen to Hannity.
Of course. I mean,
he'd be invited to the White House to basically, like, watch these things happen. He'd get a front row seat to it.
Yeah. And again, like, the dictator label, I hear you on that, Matt, but, like, he's also expressing his intentions to go after his political opponents or anybody, including Bill Barr.
I think he has intentions to be a dictator, but I mean, this guy had a trifecta when he came into office in 2016. Like,
I just think the lesson that he learned, though, once he lost, which is that, like, I'm not gonna be like a pussy about this anymore. I'm going hard. That's what I think he thinks the lesson is for term number 2.
Yeah, I don't know if the Republican establishment will get behind that, though, because I think, despite what Trump is trying to brand this as, like, they're actually after you, but they have to go through me first. It's like, that's not true. And the Republican establishment knows that there's way more distance between the crimes that they do. I mean, there's way more distance between the crime that Trump does or is being convicted of and what the crimes they're guilty of as politicians. Than there is between them and Democratic establishment. So like going after Nancy Pelosi implicates way more Republican politicians and of their own personal grifts than it does than Democrats going after Trump. Same with like George Santos. It's like if you do this kinds of like lazy, petty, really obvious crimes that aren't like just you enriching yourself with insider trading, then you kind of don't implicate them when you
need some discipline.
Pitched. Yeah,
right. Let's do this Tim Pool thing then. Just have some fun here.
I am excited about. I remember 2003 or 4, whenever Grand Theft Auto San Andreas came out, rushing home from high school, getting off the bus, booting up the computer, which I just got on the internet, and loading up IGN, which took about 15 minutes to load a page, and seeing any new screens for Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. I know how there's a whole bunch of people very excited about the new trailers and stuff like that, which I haven't seen, but I will be buying Grand Theft Auto 6 and playing it.
Yeah, I mean, I played Grand Theft Auto when I was a kid, and that was because my best friend at the time, he thought he rented a driving game from Blockbuster, but they put the wrong DVD in it.
I probably rented Gran Turismo.
Yeah, and so like he lost it, right? And we just played it in secret because we were not allowed, obviously, because of all the violence involved. So, I mean, that I that's just an aside, I would say. But it's a deeply offensive like premise, right? I mean, the at least the beginning, you beat up sex workers and that's like the.
I don't know if that's necessarily a mission, but you can do that, Emma. That says a lot about you, Emma. That's the first thing you did is go beat up sex workers.
That you have to beat up sex workers.
Okay.
You can if you'd like.
Okay.
Clearly, Emma wanted to.
Yes.
So I would say
my internal
Grand Theft
misogyny.
Auto. And maybe this is just me being like, part of the G-Shade Defense Forces, because Vice City was my favorite Grand Theft Auto, and it's the only one I ever really played or beat. And so the fact that this new one is in Vice City again makes me kind of want it, even though I really didn't care for the rest of them. Like Grand Theft Auto is like satirical, which I know is a label that gets overused a lot. And the problem with being both satirical and I guess like open world is that people can choose to engage with the game at whatever level they want. And so, but I would say broadly speaking, you can point to a lot of elements of like Grand Theft Auto that are satirical about society, satirical about like our fetishization of crime, especially in number 4. And, obviously right wingers can also latch on to certain elements that they like to point out that it's like perverted or like, woke or whatever that the new thing is. But I would say like it's clearly intended to be a satire of certain elements of our society and different types of crime that we fetishize.
Okay.
100%. Like I think like I never liked South Park because like I think even before I was pretty political, I felt like this is kind of rancid and not. To me, I think the satire in Grand Theft Auto is actually like comes from a better place than South Park. Even though like they have radio stations where everybody gets satirized, like liberals and stuff like that, which is fine. But also like their critiques, like you said, of like the police culture and stuff like that is like apparent through all of them.
I mean, look, I wasn't aware of it, and I I wasn't really into video games. I'd only played over there, so I wasn't. That's all I remember really is like, and then you could hit people with your car. That's my recollection of the game. But
again.
Yes.
You can follow traffic patterns if you'd like.
You
can't put your blinkers on,
okay.
Sorry, right. No turn signals. That's a good point.
Understood. I miss those elements, but I wouldn't say that it was a sanitized game in any way.
No, very much so. No.
And I would, but Tim Pool is very upset about this. I guess the new version is a little too woke for him.
That's kind of why I wanted to say like I think like I would be surprised if it's much of a departure.
I'm right.
Wait, so you haven't seen the trailer? Wait till you see it. Wait till you see what he's calling woke.
Oh, I'm excited.
About the game.
Yeah, we can play the trailer. I mean, free promotion for this game.
Wait, you should definitely mute it.
All right, here we go.
Because it has a full like.
Mute it.
Oh, mute it.
Okay, well, it's not really worth it because Tim's commentary.
Yeah, it has like a full Tom Petty song, I think, in it. So like.
Okay.
Let's just watch the Tim Pool thing.
Yeah.
Can you then give us a spoiler? Though,
he basically just says, "Oh wow, surprise! The first two thing you see is two women of color in a prison."
Oh.
In the trailer, that's how he starts it off about being like. That's why he thinks it's like woke to even start off.
I want to be an Albanian guy again. Like,
yeah, right.
It's Kita that asks the question. GTA 6 reveal is just around the corner. It came out just today, scheduled for December 5th. Well, the trailer came out today. As one of the most anticipated games in history prepares for its to release its first trailer, fans have many questions about how it will turn out. A major question is whether or not the upcoming game will be woke, which refers to a heavy focus on political correctness and social justice commentary. I'm going to go ahead and pause and say, yes, it will be.
Okay.
Yeah, the fact that we're even raising that question, I feel like anytime they remake something, they just are like, and you know what this needs? Some gender queerty and just some more LGBT. Like,
what a moron.
Is this
Wait,
what
but she doesn't even know. It's not a remake. Yeah.
It's a sequel, not a remake. No.
Right. Even though it's set in Vice City area again, like this is a whole new storyline and exactly a sequel to
fake fan.
Exactly. I mean, put in the work, please.
Yeah.
Also, like it's like you were mentioning earlier, like there's a satirical quality to the over the topness of GTA, but it's also like they go out of their way to be very representative of what like those like the American tropes are, and so like. Yeah, like social justice and wokeism or whatever they want to call it is part of American life. So it's probably going to be included at some level in GTA.
Also women are a part of American life. Like that's what they're.
Right.
Yes.
What are you gonna do? Yeah.
It's so woke to include 50% of the population in the game.
I'm glad someone said it.
Yeah.
Some more LGBT, like. Is this what anyone who plays this game wants?
Can you say
people have already commented when they
do they have any other thing they can say? Like it's a wind-up doll, basically.
It's like, this is everything now,
like,
and that's all they can.
This isn't like basic
wokeness and everything now. Wokeness and everything now.
I don't know. I just played the RoboCop game. They didn't make RoboCop black.
Yet
they could have though.
Yet.
Is this what anyone who plays this game wants?
People have already commented when they found out that the main character is going to be a single mom. They were like, oh boy.
Well, they needed more representation in video games. They've just been crying out for it for years.
Well, I don't understand is why these companies do this. Because they know that's not their target audience.
Can
that's
you
not
pause
what their, viewership.
Yeah, you know why they might? It's because it's not their target audience and they want to make money.
No,
so
honestly,
they might want some people like women to see themselves in the protagonists. I don't know. Am I out to lunch here?
You're a little bit off to lunch.
But it is.
Sorry.
But it also is their target audience because freaking everybody plays video games now. Video games, isn't
including
some
women.
niche-
Right.
Yeah, video games isn't some niche industry. It's larger than the movie industry now. It makes more. It brings in more money than the film industry. We should, I guess, when they make a movie for that that mostly is marketed towards women, I guess they're. What are they doing there? All right, I mean.
They're doing wokeness.
And Bender, to your point, like literally the video game industry was one of the only ones in media that never took a dive during COVID. If anything, it flourished more. Like it became like a multi-billion-dollar enterprise than it was prior to COVID.
I took a class in NYU called Video Game Theory, and it's been pretty stable. Actually, it's been even improved since that time, which was about like distribution of video games in the United States. In 2013, it was about 55. I mean, we're basically at like 52% male, 48% female. It's actually much closer than these two lovely women who Tim Pool
so why would anyone make a woman character?
Tim has just never been with a woman who plays video. He just doesn't know enough women to know women that play video games.
That's just a fantasy. A woman who plays video games.
On top of all that, though, like video games are also an art form, and the people behind making them also sometimes just don't give a shit, and they want to make the art and tell the story they want to tell, and that involves whatever characters, whatever representation, whatever that they envision in their story. And Rockstar Games with GTA, it's like the friggin', I don't know, the Martin Scorsese of video games. Like they can do whatever the fuck they want, and they don't have to give a shit about if they're gonna marginalize a group that's gonna be unhappy, because they have the biggest grossing game ever, so they have pretty much open ability to put in whatever they choose to put in there as an art form.
That's just something I was going to say too, where it's like, if you actually, it's easy to get bogged down in like sort of the overt elements of Grand Theft Auto. But if you actually look at the games since like number 3 and like Vice City and San Andreas, they borrow lots from like movies. They borrow lots from cultural elements outside of video games too. And they also are not afraid to just tell like an American story. Like that's what all the GTAs are supposed to be. It's like some corrupted Breaking Bad-esque like American dream style story as told through like crime, which is not that like out unheard of. And it's also, I think they're complaining about the fact that this is not going to sell poorly. This is actually going to sell great because GTA 5 was like literally the highest earning piece of media like
of all time.
I got the numbers here. Like the day it comes out, it's going to be ridiculous. It's going to be
GTA 5, which I bought for I think PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 4 and PC, and multiple people I think bought it on even earlier consoles, like grossed $7.7 billion. That is twice what Avatar.
So when this woke video game comes out, they're gonna like they complained about Barbie constantly and said how woke it was, but it made $1 billion at the box office, and now they're saying.
And then some people tried to turn around and say after it was successful, they were like, you know what? It actually was anti-woke.
Yeah, right, sure.
Well, because they can bring up the Marvels, right? Emma,
well, then they bring up the Marvels.
They won't bring up Barbie again
exactly
because it's just not convenient.
The Marvels. I mean, the Hollywood's going woke, and now they're gonna say that GTA is woke, but once it makes a bunch of money, they'll just ignore that.
The only argument you could make that the wokeness is hurting Marvel movies, with the Marvels, for example, is if you view like superheroes as an actual marginalized group, and people are just sick of superheroes, and that's why those movies didn't do good.
Really has a lot of like feelings about superheroes, more than most adult men do.
Representation in video games. They've just been crying out for it for years.
Well, I don't understand is why these companies do this, because they know that's not their target audience. That's not what their viewership or usership wants. And they're going to face boycotts, but they continue to do it over and over again anyway. Like, what's the incentive?
Like 5 people won't buy it
understood. Like, just purely from a financial point of view, you would think, my users hate when I do this, and they don't buy my game.
But that's not true.
Maybe they think the game is so good, the franchise is so good, it's going to sell no matter what.
He's up to something there.
And give another perspective on life.
Maybe they want to win an award.
Hey, 15-year-old boy, have you ever thought what it was like to be a ex-convict single mother? Well, you should. I don't.
Maybe that's good.
I don't know if that's the angle. I think it's more like some two things happen. Rockstar hires a 24-year-old 10 years ago and they're working in the mailroom or something. 10 years later, they're in marketing and they're in their mid-30s. And they say, okay, so we're
this is
finally
America. That doesn't
it's
happen
been
here.
how long? Like 10 or longer than 10 years, right? Since GTA 5 came out.
It's welcome
They're like, we're
mailroom
going to be
guy.
launching Grand Theft Auto 6 finally. The game is done. Or I'm sorry, actually, we should go back in time a few years.
my
They said,
God.
we're conceptualizing this game. What should we do? And this person said, well, if you want to get people our age, you've got to make it, social justice. And the character should be a woman. It should
freaking
be
mailroom
a woman of color. It should be all centered around marginalized peoples. And they were like, really? Marketing guy comes in and says, look,
What is this?
GTA 5
Sorry,
sold
wasn't
70.
Wasn't Grand Theft Auto 4, which is the one I didn't play, but wasn't that guy like a Kosovoan refugee?
Yeah, like movies are all about like not like
I remember that line. There's
it's
me,
Roman. They just don't pay attention actually to the stories of these games because they're all very clearly about these sorts of like people who are like on their last dollar, looking for the American dream in again like classic crime movie kind of
San
stuff.
Andreas is a black
Enforced
guy. I don't remember a lot of like upset about that.
and like and Vice City was basically just Scarface, like again. And
Right, again.
And so they just are, well, first of all, they're wrong because the truth is the number of people who feel strongly enough about not playing as a Latina woman in Miami are just minuscule compared to the number of people who are going to buy this and not be bothered
Day one.
buy it or buy it and be attracted to that kind of thing for one reason or another. And so they're just a minority of opinion.
I'm gonna do a beach drive-by on a jet ski with my single mom character and not think about feminism at all.
WTF
It's just funny
Cody
though, like the
writes in, saying, I want my GTA character modeled as Dakota Fanning. Made me laugh. Go on.
it's what like the Saints Row's games are. If you want to play that, play Saints Row, and that's basically it. GTA likes to think of itself as having a little bit of a higher pedigree, right or wrong.
Let's go a little
Percent
bit
of
more.
games to men. We got teenagers, we got gifts for kids, but it's almost entirely young males. How do we double our market? I'll tell you this. Take a look at makeup. The smartest thing
I gotta
the
say,
makeup industry
I
did
saw that trailer.
was pay
I saw that trailer, the GTA trailer, and the first thing I thought was like, oh, they're doing like a part of it seems like it's going to be somewhat of a modern day like Bonnie and Clyde. Like the idea that women haven't been involved, that women haven't been involved in criminal activity, and that GTA is making this up to be woke is ridiculous. It actually is in American history. There are famous women criminals. I mean,
Thelma and Louise.
Women would
Yeah.
never.
Thelma and Louise. Come on, guys.
I want to hear more of this intellectual.
tons of money to dudes who put on makeup because they're like, listen, women wear makeup. It's a guarantee. But that means sales are 90% to women. We could double our market overnight if we convince dudes to wear makeup. So the big makeup companies specifically are like, find me prominent personality men who wear makeup and we're going to give them a lot of money.
Yeah.
All of a sudden now you have people making makeup channels and they're dudes.
And they backed drag becoming trendy because not only are drag queens men who put on makeup,
Oh, yeah.
but they wear a lot of makeup.
You know
so
what,
you're buying a ton of products.
That's the complete. I gotta say, that's actually the reverse of how makeup went, at least in like the like alternative rock, punk rock, goth scene. It was that those scenes existed. The men chose to wear that makeup, whether it was part of their act or they saw someone they respected in the scene and they wanted to dress like them, and so they got it. And then prominent companies were created to make makeup for particular scenes. Like there's like specific punk rock hair dye scene, like hair dye companies that came out. Manic Panic is one of them. And it didn't come out to turn people that. The market existed for it. And the companies arose out of that being there. There is no makeup company out there going like, we're going to turn a bunch of men into wanting to be makeup consumers. No, the market already exists for it.
Well, that's what they say also about, like, when you go to Target and they're selling a bikini that might accommodate a trans woman and their genitalia. They pretend like that is there to get, people to see that and say like, maybe I'll turn trans so I can get this bathing suit, as opposed to like, oh no, there's just a market for it. It's interesting too how like he's just kind of grasping in the dark at some way to glom on to resentment that still exists from
Yeah.
Gamergate towards women.
No, you look at the numbers. 29% of men prefer playing women characters, whereas only 9% women prefer playing as male characters. So that also might have something to do with it, which is an
Ooh.
interesting thing. I honestly, I do play. What was that game? Breath
When I
of the
play
Wild,
Fortnite,
or not
when I
Breath
play
of the Wild.
Fortnite with my son, there are women characters running around all the time, and I know for a fact not that many women are playing Fortnite.
Yeah, I would never play as a women character. I only play as a really big, tough, beefy character that's really strong and flatters my masculinity. Here's a little bit more of their discussion here. I think we should just get to the
female. It's never been done before. And I'm not, I agree with some of the counter critique. It's just because they make a character that's female that you play does not inherently make the game woke or whatever. They might be thinking like, well, yeah, we've done nothing but dudes. I mean, maybe we make a female character. But I'm just,
Let's get this feeling.
You guys have played GTA, right?
Yep.
You've never played
No.
GTA?
No, I've never played GTA.
You guys, look at this.
See, we're not the target audience. No, we're not.
Why would I want to pick up a game where I'm going to run around opening fire onto random cars, mercilessly beat people in the street, steal things, and there's a whole lot of other really awful things you can do in the game, but do it as a woman. It's like, okay, in every game, you're a guy, and you can run around and just beat random people and shoot them and just do all this crazy shenanigans. But now it's like you're a woman doing it. Okay, so here's the game. You're a woman, you run around Miami, you run up to a random guy and swing at him, and then he punches you one time and you're dead and you wake up in the hospital.
So, okay, with
You're dead and you wake up in the
GTA,
hospital.
are you like trying to accomplish something?
Yeah. I would just say, like, I played the GTAs.
With women main characters, the Resident Evil,
Lara Croft.
Tomb Raider, Bayonet, Last of Us, Metroid,
Tomb Raider.
I mean, the idea that they're having this conversation, it's like a brand new concept. Is
It's
ludicrous.
such. I want Lara Croft Tomb Raider, not Lara. Come on, what the heck?
I mean, Zelda. Literally, the game is named after the female character who actually in later games ends up being a really awesome warrior herself.
Yeah, and I like the idea that like it's not a problem that every male character you play in the history of Grand Theft Auto can go around and beat the shit out of literally anybody in the entire area, whether it's New York City or California or Miami. But a woman couldn't do that. Like it's implausible for a woman to be able to exert any sort of force onto a man.
That's not realistic, but one thing that is realistic is coming across an empty helicopter for the first time, getting in it, knowing how to fly it in the air.
Yeah, you don't even have to Google. You don't even have to like look at the instruction manual and you know how to fly it. That's not realistic. Yeah, this is not a survival game.
And I love how
immersion.
those women are just there to affirm him and just be like, yes, you're so right. Like, we would never be interested in this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I feel sad for them.
It's them thinking like, and then not really understanding. Like, again, women play games now. If you look at how it skews, like it's mobile, so like more women dominate the mobile sort of phone playing space compared to men. But that means that these console games, that they see that as a people they can convert, and they already know that everyone, like I said, this is going to break GTA 5 records. I'm almost convinced. Like 7.7 billion, 10 billion, I'd say.
GTA 5 came out 12 years ago.
The trailer already broke records. It beat Mr. Beast's record for the most viewed video in 24 hours. The trailer! And
I didn't know that. Wow.
There's no gameplay footage in it either. It's just a trailer for that gives you a very basic, not even like storyline, just like here are some characters, this is the vibe, the feel. That's all they gave us. And it broke records in 24 hours. The first trailer. That's one of the reasons why. That's one of the reasons why Linda Yaccarino was on Twitter begging Rockstar to upload the trailer directly to Twitter, because they were really pumped when they heard it was coming out. She was like tweeting about how because Rockstar uploaded like a graphic with they were with like a teaser for the trailer a couple days earlier, and it like got an insane amount of views on Twitter, like 90 million impressions in like a couple of hours or whatever. And so they really thought they were going to upload it directly to Twitter, and they did eventually, but like way after they uploaded it to YouTube. But the whole time, Linda Yagorino is like tweeting at Rockstar Games, gaming is a very popular topic over on Twitter. Make sure you upload it here too. It was very funny.
The only critique I have of Rockstar Games is I would support their employees unionizing and dealing with some of that crunch issue.
All right, guys, I'm turning on the voicemail. I'm sorry, no more time for calls. I'm going to read some IMs and get out of here. Timple's Beanie Weenie says, check this lady out. Griselda Blanco Restrepo, known as the Black Widow or Cocaine Godmother, was a Colombian drug lord who's prominent in the cocaine-based drug trade in the underworld of Miami, Florida during the 1970s through the early 2000s. GTA Woke City says, female characters in video games is a new concept, apparently breaking Tim's brain.
It's Pac-Man.
Yes. Adam from Indiana.
How does she have the same appetite as Pac-Man has?
Which is actually a much better game than Pac-Man. It really is. It's the better of the two.
Adam from Indiana. These are the right wingers clearly taking back the culture with their deep knowledge. 400 blowing me as a cis straight man. I prefer the female character. Ramona NH says, I did transition because Target did some rainbow capitalism. Now, not because I'm a woman, but because they sold some shitty shirts.
In Fortnite, I was going to say to the previous one, I'm sorry, it was delayed for us. To the person who said about playing as a woman. In Fortnite, I play as a giant banana, like a...
Yeah.
So, I mean, the idea that we can't, like, who cares? It's a video game. The point is that realism goes out the window and you can do whatever you want.
You know, I think it is. I honestly think it's meaningful in a good way. There's a book by Dana Boyd called "It's Complicated: The Social Lives of Network Teens" that goes into like Second Life and those sorts of things. And as far as like we're seeing more trans acceptance, a lot of this was like people playing with their identity in a virtual space. And I think it, as a cis guy, like I'll occasionally. I go half and half. Like if I play an Elder Scrolls type game, I might make a woman character. If I think like that is an experience that people should be forced on people. I think the idea that you're playing video games that are only like your identity. It's like why can't I be a white guy from North Dakota in every video game I play? Come on, NBA 2K, let me be a white guy from a 6'2" white guy from North Dakota. Why do I have to be somebody else? Like it's just like it's infantile.
All right, guys. The final IM of the day here. Sushi and the Boish. How do you feel about going to a protest if it's sponsored by Students for Justice in Palestine, who called Hamas October 7th attack a historic victory for Palestinian resistance? I wanted to show support. There were protests near me, but I saw it was sponsored by them, and I ultimately chose not to.
I think you can. I think the reaction to October 7th. I think Finkelstein has gone through his own personal reaction. Look, I think people might be a little bit squeamish about like. Finkelstein said, like, when I thought it was simply attacks on IDF and occupation forces, I think that is a appropriate response. Now, I tend to think like you can have you have to be a little bit reserved because I didn't have that response even before I knew about civilian casualties, because like I'm like, shit, what's Israel going to do in response to this? Which is why like I don't think violence should be the number one tactic. But again, like I'm not a Gazan. I haven't been born in a concentration camp. But I think like they've I don't think Jewish Voices for Peace supports attacks on civilians. I do think like there has to be the condemnation of civilians of attacks on civilians is right thing to do, but it's also obscuring a issue, which is that actually Palestinians have a right to violent resistance against occupying force, and so like those are two different things. And Jewish Voices of Peace should not celebrate attacks on civilians at all. But I think it's a little bit it's too reductive to collapse October 7th down just to that when we know the conditions, which is like. And this is why like people like Avi Shlaim say it like you condemn terror tactics, but even Hamas is saying like and you don't have to believe them, but this is what they're saying, that we didn't want them to do the attacks on civilians. We wanted them to attack illegal targets. Now, they could just be saying that, but nonetheless, it's what they're saying. And they're not saying, we're just going to attack civilians out. So not even Hamas is saying that. And so nobody should be saying it. It's ridiculous. And people that are saying, yeah, we support attacks on civilians, they're altering the sort of resistance group that uses terror occasionally on that front. So I think Jewish Voice of Peace is a great organization doing fundamentally righteous things, frankly.
Absolutely. All right, guys, got to wrap. Appreciate you all. Thanks, Mats, Bradley, Brandon. See you guys tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want. But I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I get somehow lost my track.